Welcome to A Cast on Titan, and welcome to the Chapter 86 edition of it. We've been gone for a while, but we're back now, and we're going to try and unravel what happened in Chapter 86 and We're going to embarrass ourselves really badly, but we'll get to
They're going to embarrass themselves.
We're gonna get to why that is in a bit. But before we start, I want to put the disclaimer out there that this is a manga spoilers podcast, and that if you have not read Chapter 86, you should not listen to this until you have, and then come back once you have, so that you can be as confused as we're about to be. Also, explaining the gap between the last podcast, like where all the time went, that was scheduling difficulties between people having jobs, people having school, people going to Australia.
Hey, fuck you.
People being all over the place, and no one being here at the same time. No one being, available at the same time. So scheduling kind of fucked us on that, and I don't even know if we're going to make this out, but I still don't know if we're going to make this out by Christmas. We're damn sure going to try. So, for this section of the recording, we're just doing Chapter 86. With me tonight are just Brian and Darth.
Yeah.
Scotty.
I'm here to explain shit and make it make sense.
Yeah.
Because these two just don't know anything, and basically the last 20 minutes we're just us in a call of them going, okay, so which side's which, and who's fighting who here?
Exactly, that's true. I can't even fucking deny it. But Scotty's not here tonight because he's doing finals and such. He said he's got homework or some other such shit that he has to do tonight. But he might be in later. He might be in a future part of this recording or the next episode or however the fuck that's going to play out.
Because fuck you if we're doing this in one sitting.
Exactly. God, we'd be here till fucking 4 in the morning. We're not doing that again. We don't do that anymore.
4 in the morning, my time.
We don't do that anymore. So, to get us kicked off with here for Chapter 86, following the format we usually do, we should try and grab impressions for everybody.
All right. Well, impressions. Are we doing introductions or impressions?
I've already introduced that it's just all the three of us, just Darth, Ryan, and myself. So Sure. Well, as far as impressions go, I mean, obviously it was just an insane amount of information dumped in this chapter. So I'm quite happy overall, just because there were a lot of questions that now have at least somewhat answers to them, and a lot of other questions that have opened up in the meantime. But no, it was great fun, and especially within the context of everything in the story that's happened up to this point, it's definitely extra fun to be able to go in now and kind of dive into to what makes some of these revelations so good in this part of the story.
I don't know. This chapter was definitely a bombshell. Isayama pushed the line more than even I would have, probably. And some large historical parallels to certain things, not to mention. Yeah, it was kind of fucked up. And I like it.
Okay, I was going to say,
story of my life, though.
Enjoyed it or not?
Yeah, I wasn't too... Okay, I was confused, and then we got the official translation, and it all made sense. So it wasn't too bad.
I don't know if I can give impressions. No one said
your impression is what the fuck just happened.
I know what you mean. It's just there's a lot.
No one said my name yet, but I'm Stiller3 from the subreddit.
I didn't say my name either.
As the other voice here, the guy who just went is Darth Mewtwo, and the first guy that went is Ryan. That's good. WX Bombadil in the subreddit. Right? We've gone over it 3 or 4 different ways now, so it's fine.
I'm the loud, annoying, possibly racist one.
So, like I said, I don't know if I have impressions for this because I don't fully understand what happened in these chapters. I mean, I have a general idea, but Darth is going to fix my memory gap here.
Pretty much, just like the whole cave arc.
And help me understand what's going on. But I recall from originally when I read Chapter 86 when it came out that the word that I wanted to use for this chapter and for these, journal book readings is numb. Because I seem to recall that I wanted to say I felt numb about where we are in the story because we had so many details in these chapters that answered nearly all of the questions. I don't know if we have any questions left. But because everything's been answered, we could piece so many of the details together. I feel numb about where the story's going as opposed to where I wanted it to go and how much I'm enjoying it and that kind of thing. I haven't wrapped my head around it, so I don't know if I can really say whether I'm enjoying it or not, because I haven't really put it all together yet. So I guess I'm numb. It's tough because there's so much in this chapter. Just aside from the major plot details, but there are, character details here that I haven't really wrapped my head around either. It's specifically about Krisha,
you know what part I think,
and it affected everybody. Everybody got affected by these chapters. There's so much shit everywhere.
Well, I think part of the reason why this chapter at least was so seemingly complicated is there were just so many new characters introduced all at once, and it was kind of hard to keep track of everything.
Well, technically half of them weren't new.
Aside from the characters that we were introduced to, that we learned character details about, the ramifications of the events in these chapters affects all the other characters that we already know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, this applies new things about Connie. This applies new things about the Shifter kids. This applies new things about Armin. It's
well, what's interesting
everything.
is that after reading this now, and you can tell, maybe sure the details have been a bit fuzzy, but he clearly had the general gist of it planned from the start.
Yeah.
And now with understanding this, and because we always talk about, boy, nice to get more background about, what's going on out there outside the walls. It'd be nice to get some, find out what actually happened in history, the 2,000 years ago.
Boy, did we get it.
On a side note, I'm happy that was brought up. But now it just all at once is just coming in. And my goodness, yeah, there's a lot of lines that are being drawn now.
I was not ready for it. I was really not ready for it. We used to talk about how we were seeing a conflict being shaped that was shades of gray from one force being painted in one way as, the good guys and the main characters of the story versus the RBA kids with Zeke, who were they committed genocide and they did all these terrible things and they were kind of
they weren't the only ones.
Right. So yeah, that whole gray conflict that we were talking about was a lot bigger and a lot more detailed than we even thought was possible, because
sure, you're reading through it and you're like, I'm not even sure who's right and wrong at this point.
Seeing how Isayama's detailed this story between the two factions, between the two societies, the people, whatever you want to call them,
both sides have committed genocide. We just don't know in which order and who did it worse.
There's so many details between these two groups of people and so many acts done between them that we're full on gray now. There are no more.
It's like picking a favorite between Nazi Germany and Soviet Russia.
We used to have characters who were good guys, who we believed were the good guys. Now, moving forward, the question's going to be raised about whether or not they're still the good guys, and it's not nearly as clear as it used to be. Like, if you imagine this from the perspective of an anime watcher who's like, oh yeah, Annie's evil, she's the worst. Like, oh god, clearly the worst possible thing that could have ever existed, You contrast that to now, man, she's fucking tame.
Right.
Just seeing how this all has developed and how I still don't understand all the shit that's going on, it's kind of mind-blowing.
So now that we know what we've known, we can look back and say that RBA and, to an extension, Zeke as well, are from the mayor, correct?
Yes. No. They are Elodians that were recruited by the mayor.
Sure. Okay. Do we know that RBA are officially Elodians, or we're just assuming
they have to be? Yes.
We're inferring that. That's not officially detailed.
There's no explicit.
No, it's official because they said that the volunteers they were taking would be Elodian children who would then be given the Titan powers and would then be honorary mayor.
They said that, but they didn't specifically say it was Annie, Reiner, and Berthold. You know what I mean? It's all but guaranteed, but it's still not explicitly stated.
Is that why that blonde guy that looked a lot like Rainer's dad, that was Grish's friend?
I mean, everyone is going to assume that this is the case, and it's probably right. I'm not going to say it's not, but it's not explicit yet. This is just something that we're drawing the conclusion on because it seems obvious, right?
Sure.
I mean, Zeke is, therefore it stands to... Okay, I'm going to talk about 87 here, okay? In 87, they say that only Elodians can turn into Titans. Therefore, Titan shifters must be Elodian.
Yes?
So where do the other 7 Titan powers that the Mare have come into play?
But why?
So here's the Titan powers as they stand. There are 7 Mare and 2 Elodian. One of them is the Rice coordinate. The Mare, we have Reiner, Berthold, Annie, Marcel, Zeke, the Owl, and one more. So there is one unaccounted for on the Mare.
They lost one of their 7.
2 of their 7.
2 of their 7. What was the other second one they lost?
Ymir stole Marcel's.
Right, that's right.
So it might be back with them. We don't know what happened to Ymir.
Yeah.
And then there's the Owl.
Okay, so we were right. So it is a limited finite resource, and I didn't realize.
Yes, there are only 9 possible Titan shifters. Now 8 because Grisha ate Frida.
Cool.
So there is 1 unaccounted for shifter on the Mare side and 1 on the Elodian side. In other words, inside the walls.
Right, and Armin has 1, and
right, Armin took 1 from the Mare. So now the Mare are down 2.
Yeah.
3.
Okay.
3. Yeah. Yeah.
So we had talked about this before starting recording, but I've got a list of shit that I want to suggest as theories and as questions that I need Darth to debunk for me to see that I understand this not at all. Okay. So going based off of what we just talked about with Reiner, Berthold, and Annie being Elodian children that were placed as weapons against the Elodians on the island for the Mar. The first thing I have written down here is that the kids, including Zeke, they were used to target people in the Elodian resistance, right?
No.
No?
No. Zeke just ratted his family out.
So
there are varying theories as to why.
But Reiner, Berthold, and Annie, wasn't their goal being driven by the Mar, or was it being driven by Zeke?
Yes, driven by the Mare to go inside the walls and capture the coordinate.
Okay, so were they driven by the Mar or by Zeke? Was Reiner and Berthold driven by Zeke and Annie by the Mar?
I mean, they were 5 years old at the time, so most likely by the Mare.
So at what point did Reiner
Berthold wait a sec.
Start?
We've got like a 10-year age gap, though, between... between those guys and Zeke. So... I don't know. There was a question up in the air there.
It throws a big wrench in the thing because you think of the whole non-aging thing with the Titans. Like,
right,
but was, 60 plus years old or whatever? Because she spent all the time as a mindless Titan?
Right, but that means that they would have turned those 3 into Titans, held them for 10 plus years.
Which I'm not saying that they did, but I'm just bringing up the point that it kind of has the potential to obscure things with that caveat.
Well,
I think it's possible that the Mare just simply didn't find any eligible people other than Zeke for like 10 years or so. 10, 20 years.
Maybe they were playing the long con and they just needed the time to train and raise.
Well, isn't it possible that they set an age gap on it so that they would only be able to send them if they were of a certain age?
Well, yeah, they said that they would only send people between the age of 5 and 7, which to me says that they specified that as soon as Zeke turned 7, he turned his parents in. So what I think is that he turned his parents in order to play the really long con and revive the Elodians because he knew he was...
Really? That's interesting.
I had that thought too.
He sacrificed his parents?
There was some confusion, or I guess not confusion. People were theorizing on the subreddit that Zeke was actually working for the Mar, and it wasn't a triple cross. But I agree.
Yeah, it was just a straight betrayal.
I agree with Darth that it is a setup, and that it is actually for Zeke to revive the Elodians, because
that'd be a smart 7-year-old to figure all that out.
Well, it's because the reason I think it is because of what we saw with Zeke trying to interact with Eren and trying to get Eren to side with him and trying to get him to,
his half brother,
calm the fuck down so that he could try and explain this shit because he knows that Eren doesn't understand this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. So who knows how much Zeke has changed in the last, I don't know.
So that raises the question, though. If Zeke is actually trying to rebuild the Elodian resistance, how does that impact Reiner, Berthold, and Annie?
They probably don't know.
Berthold and Reiner, though, specifically, were trying to work with him and saw Zeke as kind of his boss, or their boss.
Yeah. They would always cede to him.
were they in on the Elodian resistance or not?
I doubt they would be, no.
Well, you never know, because, again,
Zeke,
we go back to the point where they would have had to have been Elodians first, right?
So that would mean that Zeke is holding his cover with them as trying to work for the Mar, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay, before we go any further, let's go back and just establish like a timeline of what happened here. Because we go back and who abused who first?
So
like, okay, it starts 2,000 years ago. The Titan power comes down, right?
Right. Ymir Fritz made a deal with the devil,
Sure.
and that devil gave, or they didn't. I don't know if it gave, but it created the power of the Titans.
That's ground zero. That's ground zero for the Titans then.
Right. It created the power of the Titans, and it was given to Ymir Fritz, and those are the Elodians. That's that group, right?
Okay. They were all Elodians.
Right.
And they subjugated and oppressed the mayor with their power.
The first thing that we have documented from Chapter 86 about one group acting out towards another is that the Elodians oppressed the Mar and raped them.
Did that actually happen, or was that just in like the false history that they were shown? He learned when he grew up? We learned that.
We do not know.
His history lesson. Yeah, and then he comes back at the end and says, "But that was all false history. Everything we learned was wrong." So was
right.
that?
So we don't know which one we could trust though.
Okay. So it may not have happened. They may not have.
It may or it may not be the case.
Yeah.
But according to it was Grisha's dad who said it. So he might have been being pressured into telling Grisha the false history.
No, he was absolutely. He was basically threatening a gunpoint into saying, "Hey, teach your kid the fuck happened to us."
Yeah.
So in essence, we really have no idea who started.
We cannot tell which source is trustworthy now.
Okay.
Sure.
Well.
Because like Grisha translating that stuff was also like they're like, "Oh, how do you understand that?" And he's like, I don't. I just believe in the word of God. Praise Jesus."
Yeah.
So it looks to me like he was just basically looking at the pictures and saying, "Ooh, this is what it looks like."
Yeah, I was going to call bullshit on Grisha too in that scene for just saying, "Hey, I believe it because I believe it."
Yeah.
You know? So it's unclear. I wanted to have the stance that, Elodia was kind of a bunch of bastards too because of that, but we don't know if it's true or not.
Assuming that that's true either way, the 7 Titan powers that the mayor got, they stole from the Elodians? Is that what happened? Okay.
There were 9 originally. Okay, if we're going back to Ground Zero, there were originally 9 that were entrusted to the Elodians. There was a war with the Mar where the Mar stole 7 of them.
Right.
Right? And
how do we know how they stole them yet, or is that just kind of like?
That's just what it said, I think.
Okay, yeah. So we don't know how that actually happened.
So the Mar have 7 in the first Titan War, and the Elodians are left with 2. So, from how I understand it, is that the 2 that are left is King Fritz and other, and they leave and go to the island, which is where Attack on Titan takes place. They build the walls, and that's where that's at.
Right, upside down Madagascar.
Right, that's where that's at. And the King Fritz did that because he did not want to still have that war with the Mar. He kind of wanted to get away from the war, right?
Possibly, because he is the first king, the progenitor Titan, who is the one that passes down his will through the coordinate. And the coordinate users always went mad and said, we're sinners. It could be that he was brainwashed into believing the Mare truth or something.
Can you say that again?
You know how, Frida would freak out when she was with Historia and go don't go outside the wall, and talk about how we're all sinners within the walls and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
That sounds like the Mare brainwashing bullshit to me.
Okay.
So it's possible that the reason the first king left is that he was influenced by the Mare or something. That's just another thing that we don't know the exact reason.
Well, it was the progenitor Titan that had the mind wiping ability, right?
Right.
So why wouldn't use that? Well, I guess he would use it on his own people, wouldn't he? That's what that was about.
He used it on them to forget the Mare existed and the outside world existed, and his will is passed down through the coordinate, and his will says, we're sinners, blah, 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 insert random Mare propaganda here.
I was trying to think about why he would do that to Frida, but Frida inherited it, so his will would be,
if the outside world decides to come, you have permission to release the Wall Titans and fuck them up.
No. Or
No,
it should be, but it isn't.
The whole point is that he walled himself in. The whole point was that they'd seen
Right,
the world,
but-
seen what
but
they could do. And they said,
Knowing
all right,
what we know
walling
from
ourselves
earlier
in.
chapters, Ryan.
You're saying that he wasn't threatening to pull down the wall, like if it came to it, if they were attacked on their little island. that they
Well,
would
remember the
expand
owl
walls,
said
attack
that
Titans?
the owl said that no such threats had been made.
That was the implied threat by building the walls in the first place. Go back and wait. Are you saying that he?
No.
No, you got it wrong.
What the mayor said that he explicitly said, "Touch my walls and they will break down this planet," basically. But the owl said no such threat was made. We're just invading for fossil fuels.
So, okay, we should establish what the current conflict is between the Elodians and the Mar, then, to help make sense of that, right? There are Titans on the island outside the wall because they are Elodians from the Mar location who were sent there as some kind of punishment against the
like some
Elodians.
penal colony.
So the Mar cannot invade because they don't have the resources to do so, and the Titans that are on that island would be a threat to them. Also, aside from the Elodian walls, as well as the people within the walls.
Right.
Right, because the walls do contain millions of Titans, and they could be unleashed.
Okay.
Yes.
But
because that's an ever-present threat because the power is there.
Right, but what I'm saying is, the First King's will, as we've known it through the story up till now, the one that's passed down through the Rice family through the coordinate, is don't bother going outside the walls. We are sinners. We shouldn't do anything. Stay within the walls, blah, 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 blah.
Right,
Well,
because the
that's where
Elodians
his
don't want conflict.
But that is the mayor propaganda. We are sinners is lines out of the mayor playbook.
Where are you getting this "we are sinners" line?
Because that's
From Frida's mouth.
Well, the thing about that's what I wanted to ask about, because if she inherited the progenitor Titan and the coordinate power, shouldn't she know all the information the First King knew?
But remember, the First King's consciousness is also passed down with the coordinate, and it hijacks whoever takes that power.
That's what I'm saying. If she has that, she should know that's a load of bullshit.
Right. So then maybe the First King was brainwashed or something.
That couldn't be, because he would have just not left.
Well, he left for some reason.
He left because he didn't want to stay
To
at
escape
war.
the war. Yeah.
With the Mar, right?
Then why would he spread
conveniently,
the
it
"we are
happened that they
sinners, we
settled
are
it up.
sinners"?
He didn't.
Yeah, he did.
The Mar did that.
Yes, but then he enacted it through the coordinate.
The Rice family believes that. The people inside the walls don't believe.
They have no idea.
No, they don't. But the person in the coordinate, the First King, says that to the Rice family and to whoever comes to their church of preachiness.
Okay. I think I'm following you now. Okay. I believe the reason he said that was because he doesn't want his descendants to go to war with the Mar. I see what you're saying, though. He adopted that even though he knows it isn't true, right? He's bringing that propaganda to his Rice family, his Fritz family, whatever, because
in order to keep them safe. Because
to keep them from going to war with the Mar, because he does not want them to start a new war with the Mar.
Well, and I guess it does make sense too, because when you think of the generations and generations of people within the walls who have now, bred and grown up and whatever, who have really no knowledge, even generationally now at this point, of all the events and how they got there and what happened outside the walls. So you see the issue with the scouts, who are always looking in kind of exquisite of human nature, to explore, to push out the boundaries and see what's out, and inevitably that would probably lead to some conflict down the road, which they're just trying to avoid in the first place by just cutting that off right at the stem.
That's why they tried to do the mind wipe thing, because they wanted people to not try and explore outside the wall.
Because they know people are going to inevitably try to do it anyway, and with enough time, gap generationally, people are just going to forget the reasons why they're there in the first place.
And that's why
they never knew the reasons they were there.
And
exactly, because it's been so long.
This idea
because it was mind wiped.
This idea is also why the military police pushed those ideas out. Right. That's why the military police was so corrupt, and that's why the military police was so anti-Survey Corps. Because they wanted to be anti-Survey Corps, because the Survey Corps being successful means we're going back to war with the Mar, which is where we are right now.
Yeah, because that's the only inevitable outcome by them exploring outwards.
Right. Is they eventually discover they're on an island, and then they're going to want to cross it.
Yeah. Or else the other ones find them first.
That is also true. When we established what the current conflict is, that was something Darth mentioned, that the Mar right now are trying to break this stalemate by investing in R&D to try and create weapons using fossil fuels and such to create more modern military equipment they could use to invade the island. At that point, the Titan powers are meaningless, right?
Now, maybe this is where I was...
They want the fossil fuels beneath the island because they're going to go to war with the rest of the world, and they need the fossil fuels for basically World War I tech.
Well, don't they have their own fossil fuels?
I think that
it's fossil fuels
right.
still, or they run out.
Well, yeah.
The whole reason they're thinking of invading the island is because there's large deposits of fossil fuels under the walls.
That island is basically Saudi Arabia with all its oil underneath it.
So there are more groups outside the Mar, even farther west, I suppose, that they
Where do you think the Asians came
I'm
from?
not sure about. I don't know if that was explicitly
Yes,
stated.
it's true. There are. 87, the Elodian resistance mentions that they have a benefactor to the east.
To the east? Not
To
the
the
west?
east. To the east.
So what's stopping them from getting something from the west?
Who?
The Mar.
Maybe they are the West.
It's probably not their territory. It's probably owned by another country.
Well, what I'm wondering is obviously they want to develop this military tech so that they can invade the island, but
No, they want to invade the island so they can get the fossil
their...
fuels and then develop the military tech.
Yeah.
Why can't they get the military tech without invading the island first?
Because they need fossil fuels.
They don't have the resources for it. It's not quite as black and white as that. It's like a process thing. You know, they need fossil fuels to build the things to go to the island to get fossil fuel to build more things.
What?
So there's still an element that they're still building things, but they just can't expand to the scale they want without that additional resource deposit. Because the idea is that they're saying...
Take it this way.
They're saying
you need 1,000 units of oil. You need 1,000 units of oil in order to build a weapon.
I understand they don't have the
Your
resources.
territory has 300 units.
No,
there is unclaimed territory that has 2,000 units.
I get
you need to go to that territory first.
You're not really you're dumbing it down too much. You're not getting the point. They already have the technology to build these things, but to scale it up, they need more.
That's fair too.
The thing that I'm not getting is why they can't get it anywhere else.
Because that is all owned by other...
Because that's how the real world works, unfortunately. There are large places across the earth where certain resources are more rich and in density than others.
Well, I mean, if they're so hell-bent on getting the resources...
Why would you go invade Saudi Arabia?
Yeah. Why don't they just go fucking trade with somebody so they can get what they need, so they can get the fucking military...
Because they're probably enemies with the rest of the world? Because they're doing military purposes, which will then be used against their benefactor?
I guess since this is the Middle East, they're not friends with anybody.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, basically, if you're trying to invade somebody, they're not going to trade resources to you first, generally.
Well,
they're gearing up for a world war.
Doesn't that assume that there are more Elodians outside of...
It's not more Elodians, it's just more other people.
Well, if they're other people, then why would they give a fuck? Just trade if it's mutual...
Because they're going to attack them. It's going to be a world war thing.
If you can create a good trade with another country before you initiate some kind of world war, couldn't you get those resources from some neutral country?
They're probably already in a state of Cold War.
You could say, why does Russia want Crimea so bad?
Yeah.
Well, they took it anyway. I mean, it's just like, it's one of those things where it doesn't necessarily have to make, perfect sense even in the real world, or else we wouldn't have these nutty borders and massive conflicts anyway.
Well, I mean, I had started this part of it by saying that they're trying to break the stalemate by creating that military tech. I just don't. They can't do that if they're trying to.
The impression I got, at least from what I read, is that it was saying that the civilization of the mare was growing, the population is growing. It's like you think of an industrialized nation, and how after industrialization, how just the populations across those countries in the real world just rocketed. You know what I mean? And all of a sudden, there's a lot more demand for pretty much everything. So as their technology is scaling and growing to meet the increasing demand, they realize both from a resource perspective and just from a general technological perspective, say we need to, we need to be on top of this. We need to expand, and we need to start dipping into new areas that we haven't had the need to do before, because the necessity just wasn't there up until this point.
Plus, previously, the mayor had relied on their Titan powers in order to have power over everyone. But now that other countries are starting to develop their advanced military tech, the Titan powers are becoming less and less powerful.
Right.
Yeah.
So now the mayor needs to rush to catch up with the rest of the world.
So what currently is the threat from the Mar? I assume
They
that the
want to
Mar
come in
right now is the big bad.
Break down the
Why?
walls and kill everybody and take so that they can harvest the resources that are on the island that the walls are built.
Right. So before the mayor can do anything, they need to secure the coordinate in order to make sure that the coordinate user will not just tear down the walls and send all the Titans at the mayor.
Exactly.
Once that's happened, they can just go in and blitzkrieg it. It's like assassinating an enemy commander.
But aren't they deterred by... No, they wouldn't be, because they'd have the coordinate power, right? So they wouldn't be worried about the Titans.
That's why they're sending in covert people.
Presumably.
Okay, so they wouldn't have any threat from the Titans on the island because they'd have the coordinate power.
That too.
Yeah, because they'd be able to, in theory, control them all.
Okay, so...
And it also explains why Eren Yeager, son of Grisha Yeager, was the quote-unquote worst person to have the power, according to Rainer.
Right.
Reiner.
Because now he has potentially the ideology of restore Elodia.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, isn't that kind of... Isn't that something we don't know because we don't know what the Reiner and Zeke objective is?
No, technically we don't know. That's definitely
their objective is to get the coordinate, and we know that the mayor objective is to get the coordinate for X reason. So we can basically assume from there that the mayor know about Grisha, they know what he knew, that Eren has the coordinate and is the son of Grisha, therefore he's probably going to try and use the coordinate against them.
Well, we can't know for sure, but we can make a lot of strong inferences.
Right.
So there are definitely signs that point to that, but again, it's not conclusive.
So the conflict that we're seeing right now is that the Mar want the coordinate, and we don't know whether or not Zeke and Reiner are for the Mar or for the Elodian resistance.
I'd say it's a 99.99% chance that Reiner, Berthold, Annie are all for the mayor, and a 50-50 on if Zeke is for or against the mayor.
But Reiner and Berthold they were working for Zeke, but we don't know if he had a cover-up or not.
Well,
if you're a double agent, do you tell your underlings?
I mean, if you're going to convince them to join your side, like Reiner and Berthold tried to do to Eren.
Well, remember, they did work for him, but they seemed to disagree with him. They seemed to reluctantly obey him after he had to express his authority.
Right, that's why they had that big fight.
Wasn't that because he had to? Isn't that because Reiner and Berthold wanted to save Annie?
We don't know why they had that fight.
They can have disagreements and that they're not just 100% superior underling.
Well, we don't even know if that was the reason. That might have been the reason, but that might have just been a byproduct of it, and that there was something else that was more pressing. Because remember, we still don't have details. We still don't have details about that, and we still don't have details about when Ymir left as well, which is about the same time.
Plus, you have to remember that Zeke got this started by backstabbing his parents and informing on them. So it's not a stretch to say that the other Elodian children would be in that same mindset of, let's get more glory for me and for my family by telling the mayor that their precious warrior is a traitor, and then they take that power and give it to another kid.
Well, it's also possible.
We don't know if that's their mindset or not, though.
Bad guy. That Zeke really has been turned by the mayor, and that it's RBA that have ulterior motives that have not been necessarily conveyed just yet.
Or none of the above, and they're just all 100% go mayor.
If we've learned anything in the story so far, it's that Isayama goes out of his way to make a point about the whole not morality not being black and white, and how it's it's like yeah, that's always a present theme, but he definitely goes out of his way to express that in a lot of different parts of the stories. So it's definitely difficult to sit here and be like, yeah, one of them's going to be the bad guy and one of them's not, because I think it's not going to be that clear, and he's already made that very explicit that that's the case.
So we've established now that we have an unanswered question left, and that is about where Reiner, Bert, Zeke, and Annie fall on the side of Mar versus Elodian. We don't know.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. So the next question I want to ask is about Reiner's comment to Annie about her the implication that we've seen before that Reiner and Berthold saw Annie as being lesser than them.
Right. Here's more evidence for Reiner being with the mayor then, is that Reiner and Berthold both use some sort of epithet against Elodians, like Berthold getting super pissed and saying, "Children of the devil, I'll kill you all," Children of the devil directly relating to Ymir, deal with the devil.
Right.
And that would
when you're most pissed, the truth is going to come out. You're not going to try to keep double-crossing. You're going to say what you really mean.
And that Children of the Devil
same
bit
thing
came from the Mar propaganda, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
It sounds like that's very likely. And I think if you look at the three shifters, RBA, out of the three of them, do you think that Annie probably has the most chance of being of a different mindset than Reiner and Bert, who seem to be, from the evidence we've been given, the most conclusively, for
Right.
the mayor.
And Reiner tells Annie, if you want to prove that you and your father are different from this, I forget what it was, cursed race, filthy race,
Something like that. Yeah.
Jewish race, some bad negative racial implication, then kill Marco. Once again, Elodians are bad, Mare are good. So it can be reasonably concluded that Reiner and Berthold are both pro-Mare.
It makes you wonder, and I mean, this is obviously like a super far-fetched kind of theory, but it makes you wonder if like Annie is to her father what Zeke was supposed to be to Grisha. Do you know what I mean?
We can't tell.
We can't tell, but you know how the whole idea
I
was
almost want to go back and cross-reference the images we have of Annie's father with the Elodian revivalists.
Well, wait a minute.
Yeah,
now,
no,
hold
yeah,
on.
because what we've seen is that obviously Grisha gave up Zeke, and basically the idea was that, okay, we're going to raise him with our values, and then when we give him over for the training, he's still going to be, a player on our team. Obviously they fucked it up. They didn't do a very good job. But I wonder, from what we've seen, if that's something similar, that Annie's dad was doing with her, but she didn't
Ryan,
came in quite as much.
If Zeke really did double cross, then the thought is he turned his parents in when he turned 7 because he said, oh, shit, I'm not going to get chosen and this is going to go to waste, so I need to do something to make me stand out in the mayor's eyes. So then he turned him in and they said, oh, what a good boy, we'll make you into a warrior.
It could be he was really turned, or it could be like you said, he was
right.
Either way, he didn't do what Grisha wanted him to do, whether he's right or wrong or has his own plan.
Well,
at the end of the day,
still
could have done it.
Had to betray Grisha in order to do that.
Well, I was going to say, Darth, the theory that we had about Zeke actually being an Elodian revivalist still, if he was 7, that would have had to have been an idea planted in his head by Grisha, right?
Yeah.
So turning Grisha in would have been part of the plan. Right. So...
Well, Zeke could have thought on his own and said, I'm not going to get picked at this rate, I have to do something drastic.
Yeah, but he's like 7. Could he come to that conclusion on his own?
Did you see the look in his eyes? He looked pretty damn smart. I think I could have come up with a plan like that when I was 7.
Well, looking at what happened in Chapter 87, I want to believe that Grisha had orchestrated that as a scheme that Zeke was supposed to follow. You know what I mean?
Well, here's what I think. Here's what I think right now, and this could be totally wrong, but I think what it looks like to me is that Grisha handed Zeke over. Zeke did get legitimately turned by the mayor and ratted him in. But then we have a big time gap between that event and when we next see Zeke, as Monkey Trouble way down the road. It's possible as he grew up, he could have realized or either broken out of the brainwashing somehow, learned something about his past and realized, came to different conclusions. So it's possible he could have gone back and started double crossing them after that event. It didn't have to be something that had already been established at that point.
I think it's actually more likely to be the opposite, but okay, continue.
Well,
What do you mean?
Like, I think that he started with the shit, I've got to turn them in so I get picked, and then based off his dialogue about, oh, you're not like your father, and oh, we've both been tricked by your father, then he might have changed his mind later in life and gotten full.
Well, I think if that's the case, then I would discount the first part entirely, because
I forgot about
why would he pretend, turn him in for his own skin and then change? I think at that point he would have already been turned.
Okay, fair.
Right? Yeah.
I forgot that Zeke said that he said to Aaron that we've both been tricked by Grisha.
By your father.
Right, I fucking forgot about that.
It doesn't sound like Grisha was a stand-up guy, after all that's said and done.
Is there a third option available here that says that Zeke is actually working on his own and he has some sort of plan for himself?
Possibly, yeah.
Could be. I mean, that's the thing. It was a long time between those two events.
So I think, Ryan, the theory that you were saying about how the time gap sort of changed Zeke's mind, I think is also what happened to Annie. I think they both did that. Though I agree with Darth, I think he's got a pretty solid theory about Reiner Berthold being Mar, for sure.
Sure. Yeah, no, I think that's hard to dispute unless evidence is given otherwise.
It's fucked up.
It is.
Child brainwashing, what do you expect?
There was another question somewhere in that discussion that fucking got lost to time that I can't remember. Okay, I don't understand what I was thinking when I wrote this, so I want to toss this out.
You don't understand what you're thinking now.
Yeah, I don't, honestly. I'm so fucking topsy-turvy right now. I don't get anything. Okay, so I'm going to read this. This is my own thought that I wrote down, which said, when Ryder said, our goal was to destroy humanity, but that changed after finding Eren, right? What I wrote down here says, that implies that they were rebels, but then why would they kick in the wall to destroy humanity?
I don't get that.
Well, because they needed at the end of the day they needed the resources.
That's
right?
That's the last part of it. Was why would they kick in the wall to destroy humanity for fossil fuels if they were rebels?
No, my question is why the hell would they kick in the wall if their goal is to go in undetected and prevent the coordinate from going, shit, we're under attack. Send out the Titans.
Me asking that assumes that they're Elodians and not Mar. So that's wrong to begin with.
Even if they're Mar, right? Because because they were trying to. The whole reason they did that was to draw the progenitor Titan out, because they needed to steal the coordinate power. They had to draw the coordinate power out.
Which is really fucking stupid, because they were supposed to go in undercover without drawing the attention of the progenitor Titan, find the progenitor Titan, and take him.
Well, I guess they did.
Not basically make the biggest act of war you could have possibly made.
Well, yeah.
Well, it was a big diversion.
Darth's got a point, though. If they kick in the wall, doesn't King Fritz just go, oh, I guess we're fighting now, and then just fuck them up?
But he sent out the walls.
But he didn't.
Right.
Why?
Well, he couldn't because Grisha already had him at that point.
Right. But it could possibly be... Well, I bet what Grisha was saying was, hey, use the walls, take out the Titans, and then the Rices said no, and that's why Grisha went, bam, I'm eating you now. But,
Right, yeah. So why did the first king do that then, if he disagreed?
This is the first king, and he was probably brainwashed into the Mare ideology, is what I was saying earlier.
I don't understand, though.
No, see, I'm running into a block there, because he would still... That contradicts with the entire purpose why he built the walls in the first place. If he's not going to be able to defend himself when they break down the walls,
if he fell into Mare ideology of we are sinners and truly believe that,
why would he build the walls in the
then
first place?
He would build the walls to imprison as many of the sinful Elodians as he could to prevent them from hurting the rest of the world.
I don't believe that, because I don't believe...
Yeah, that seems wrong, because, I mean, if that's the case, he has no problem. Why wouldn't he just kill all the Elodians in the first place, instead of not doing anything when they get attacked from outside? If he put in all that effort into keeping them alive and well, and their little world running within the walls, why would he do nothing about it when they get attacked? If he was going to do that, just wipe them out in the first place.
Just mind control them all to say they killed themselves.
Yeah, no, you might as well, because it's going to save you.
Okay, Lelouch.
I need to go back though, because I got fucking confused when we were talking about kicking in the walls. Why couldn't Bertholdt have just kicked in all of them and then just he would have gotten killed for it, but wouldn't that
then all the Titans would have come in and killed all humanity?
Wouldn't that achieve the Mar objective?
No, because then the king has enough time to react and say, shit, take the walls, kill the...
Well, no, Bert has shown that he doesn't have the ability to do that at once. It was enough of a struggle for him just to do that the first time, and we've seen as the events played out in the last few chapters that he doesn't have that capacity to. If he broke
off gas too much and weaken,
he wouldn't be able to make it into the second wall and break it before the whole thing fell apart.
Okay,
so there was always those three walls in order to prevent that exact thing happening.
So what did we say was the goal of kicking in the first wall?
To draw out the coordinate Titan, and it didn't work for whatever reason. Either way, I'm not sure. Maybe it was just...
It didn't work because Grisha left.
Maybe it was just a chance to, in the confusion, let the RBA integrate into society with nobody noticing.
So that assumes that the Mar did not know who had the coordinate power at that time. Or they would have assumed
probably,
it was the king.
Else they would have just ninja'd in and kidnapped the king.
Or they assumed it was the king.
Yeah, but they didn't know because it had been so many generations, there'd be no way to verify that.
I mean, if they assumed it was the highest person in power, wouldn't they then not need to kick in the wall in the first place?
I still don't know why they kicked in the wall. Because the goal was to be
smart enough to know it probably wasn't the obvious choice.
Right, but then the threat still stood of whoever actually controlled it saying, shit, time to send the Titans out.
So did Zeke
my question is why they didn't just ninja in, kidnap a high-ranking member of the government, and then torture them to get the information. Done. Series over.
But... at that time, wasn't it Grisha who had the coordinates, so wouldn't the noble not have been able to tell him?
They would have said Rod Rice, or they would have said Frida Rice. But the RBA doesn't know that, though.
But at the beginning of the series, it wasn't Frida, it was Grisha.
It was Frida.
Well, I don't know.
No, it was Grisha, because Eren ate Grisha to get it, right?
Right, but Grisha ate Frida basically just after the wall fell.
Right, but at the beginning of the series, when they kicked in the wall, it was Grisha who had the coordinate power,
still Frida.
not Frida.
No, because when Grisha left Shiganshina and said, Eren, I'll show you in the basement when I get back, hint, hint, brainwash, then he was going on the trip on her favorite rocket ship, soaring through the skies to see Frida Rice.
Well, remember, they're not telepathic. There was a long delay between when the attack happened and when the Interior actually found out it had happened. So even if the coordinate, was still in Frida's hands, there would have been a long delay between when she actually found out and needed to get all the way out there and use it between when the events had actually happened. So I think it's kind of a moot point because I don't think it really matters which one had it at that time.
I don't think she had to be in the physical location. The coordinate's strong enough that she could just probably radio signal out.
Oh, I guess I thought I meant like her turning into a Titan and just fucking them up herself.
Well, what about Darth's point that if they assumed it was Frida Rice, why didn't they just go and get her to begin with?
Because the reason is because I think you're giving the mayor too much credit.
Well,
remember,
also,
it's one thing.
You have to remember that it wasn't the Rice family; it was the Fritz family. At some point, the two switched, and we don't know when or how.
They split, I think is what happened.
Yeah. But the point is, in order for a quote-unquote infiltration thing like you're talking about, so you're saying you got to have some guy, not a bunch of 7-year-olds or whatever, 12-year-olds. No, listen, not a bunch of kids who were sent there initially, like the way they did it, somehow get in the walls undetected without being noted all the way inside, do the work, and get out there, which I think is frankly impossible.
Well, they already showed how they could do that. It's just by having kids enroll in the military.
Yeah,
well,
Grisha,
which is exactly
got in pretty much undetected too. He's just I accidentally got out.
Grisha fucking wandered up to the walls. He could have been fucking drunk, and Shadas would have taken him in.
Sure.
Yeah, and they didn't even question where the hell did you come from? He was just why are you fighting? Why are you outside the walls? What the hell's going on?
He still raised a bunch of red flags until they accepted him.
Whereas
with the kid, there were no red flags even raised because, I'm sure they didn't say, oh yeah, here's the keys to the kingdom his first day in.
Oh,
they had actually assessed that the guy wasn't going to kill them all.
I don't know if we know that. I don't know if we know how good their border patrol is.
Well,
probably not great. But the point is that they raised no red flags. They weren't
that could have. Zeke could have shifted, just gone to an unattended area of the wall, and just carried them over. Done.
Sure, but again, we don't know why Zeke wasn't there in the first place and why he's showing up now, because this goes back to whether he has potentially ulterior motives.
Also fair. But what I was saying earlier about, or what Siller said about how the lines switched, we have to remember the fake king still went by the name King Fritz.
Yes, because he was a decoy. That was the whole point. Is because everybody would say, oh yeah, of course King, quote-unquote, Fritz, or whatever his name was, would have the coordinate power. The whole thing was
so at some
not
point
only from a political perspective, but
the Rices switched names with the Fritz. So it's not that they split, it's that they swapped places for some reason.
They swapped because it was a decoy for the Mar.
Yeah. Because if somebody would come in and do a smash and grab exactly like what you're describing, they would fuck it up because exactly why they came.
Because Fritz wouldn't actually have the power. It would actually get the Rices. All right. So
you torture him and figure out who actually did it.
So the reason
not just make the most overt declaration of war we possibly could.
So kicking in the wall actually did serve to just try and draw out the progenitor Titan, I guess.
Which
because that's what. Remember, they were saying that their whole goal at the beginning was to draw him out so they could seal the coordinate. They didn't know Eren had it.
But didn't Reiner say on the top of the wall to Eren that their original goal was to just kill everyone? Not explicitly steal the coordinate.
I still don't believe that, because
that was what, chapter 50?
Chapter 50 something, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was 50 exactly, because it was the bombshell at the end of the. No, that wasn't it. 50 was the coordinate itself. That must have been 48.
He told Eren that the goal changed.
I remember that, yeah.
The goal changed from killing everyone to getting Eren because they realized that Eren had the power.
Maybe, what it might have been is they were just going to try to kill everyone in an effort to draw the coordinate out from whoever might be waiting till the end, or B, because inevitably they had to kill everybody anyway to get the resources. So that was it was inevitably going to be a goal. But then they said, oh shoot, we didn't realize the coordinate was actually going to be here right now this early. Let's scrap plan A and just do this right now, and we can get back to killing everybody after we take care of the coordinate. That's the way I interpreted it, because I think they were going to try to do that regardless, because if they were trying to get the resources, they had to kill everybody either way. So it was just a matter of priorities, saying, okay, our priority changed, the plan changed because you showed up, and now instead of having to deal with that down the road, we're just going to have to address this now and then get back to the genocide later.
So, to Ryan's point about them having some sort of border patrol security and actually having a good process for that, it does exist because we saw it in Levi's OVA, right? Levi lives in the underground because he can't get access to above ground because it takes resources.
So they have guards at the entrance and exit to the underground. That's not the border patrol of the walls themselves, though.
Not necessarily border patrol, but that's like immigration access control, you know. However you want to title
that. To be fair, though, that is entirely internal. Whereas if you think about it, Greece was probably the first one to come from outside the walls and say, I don't know, 100 years. So they might have had no, even if they had protocol with it, they may have had no experience. Yeah.
Well, if somebody raised the question.
Whoa.
If somebody raised the question, they would have had to have taken that to the guys who normally handle that, though.
They could have just said we're from Shiganshina, so that no one knows everyone in Shiganshina. So
I was going to say, the scouts are the people who usually deal with anything outside the walls. That's really their jurisdiction.
So I want to know why, on top of the wall, before Reiner and Bertholdt revealed themselves as the Colossal Armored Titan, Bertholdt suddenly freaks out and goes, Reiner, we can go home now!
Because they were going to try and take Eren at that point, at that moment?
But they didn't know he was the coordinate for another 8 chapters.
They did. Did they know? They knew.
Maybe they just needed a Titan ship. Well, remember. Okay, think about it this way. There's only 7 Titan powers they had, so each one is super valuable because they're in such limited, amounts of them.
They didn't.
So if they say, "Holy shit, we found one of our 7. We found one of the 2 lost ones that was stolen," that changes the game altogether because that's a super high priority item.
Well, that's
so if they can get him and bring him back, that brings them back up to, I don't know, what was it, 6 shifters? Out of a potential total of 7, that's huge.
That would put him at 8.
Imagine that shifting their focus.
Fair. That would put him at 8, and
okay, whatever it was, yeah.
And because they didn't know he was the coordinate. They could have just taken that back, and that would have been enough to satisfy the Mar, at least for those kids, right?
Yeah.
Because you can't demand that these kids, be able to actually bring back the progenitor Titan. That's unrealistic, Yeah. To actually get the rewards that Bertholdt and Reiner were looking for, just getting one of the lost Titans back would have been enough, is what we're thinking.
Yeah, and maybe their whole plan all along was cause a fuss, infiltrate, kill everybody in the long run as much as you can, and if you happen to see any Titans along the way, that's a bonus. Try to take them and bring them back.
So,
their exact wording was, our objective was to wipe out all the humans within the wall, but there's no need anymore. Eren, if you come with us, we won't touch the wall ever again.
Huh.
So Reiner and
Bertholdt... without the coordinate power, there's no threat, because they can't...
But they didn't know he was the coordinate. That's only a 50-50.
Yeah, he hadn't actually shown that power yet, right?
Then,
not for another 8 chapters.
Right. So
maybe there was something...
Reiner and Bertholdt's goal was just to bring back something. Something. It didn't have to be the coordinate. It had to be something.
Maybe he was lying.
Maybe everything we've read is a lie.
Yeah.
Okay, good point, Ryan. He could have lied just to entice Eren to come with them. And...
We just don't know.
Right. Just to get Eren to come willingly. Because that's something he would have wanted.
The kids were going to be rewarded with something if they were able to be successful in their mission, right?
Right.
My assumption was the reward would be not death, because it seems like the only way to give
and the reward was already stated as well. It was
not death.
Marrying citizenship for their families.
Right. That's the one I was thinking of. That's the reward they would have wanted.
It's like the honorary Britannian system in Code Geass.
And if they were able to gain more citizenship, at that point their families could have just gotten the fuck out. They could have just gone and fled to some other country, right?
Yeah.
So I still think Reiner and Bertholdt's goal was just to come back with something, anything that would have gotten them that reward.
Well, Reiner does also say, sorry it's so sudden, but we gotta go right now, and basically we're gonna go with or without you.
That doesn't make any sense. With or without you? They can't go back without him.
Well, they didn't say that, but...
That doesn't make any sense to me.
But he made it... He implied it, basically.
So, one of the other questions I wanted to ask was about the old references Reiner and Bertholdt would make to the hometown.
Home village.
Is that talking about the Mar location, or is that actually talking about where they stayed while they were while they were on the island?
I don't think there's anywhere safe to stay on that island.
Well, I mean, like when they were within the walls. You know what I mean? Like during training or whatever.
No.
Well, actually,
Remember, their quote-unquote
because...
home village was just a lie about, or in order to say where they came from, because that's how they got discovered in the first place, was that they checked Annie's background check and said, oh shit, there's 2 more kids from that village.
That's not the one. That's not the part of it I'm asking about. What I'm wondering is there were other moments where they had talked about going home, where they were talking about going to a hometown specifically, or some sort of village.
Right.
But does that mean the Mar location? Because if it does, I want to know how they were planning to get across from the island to back
they
to
have
the
boats.
nation state. Do they just?
Well, remember in that shot.
Remember what it was like in '87 when all the prisoners were brought there.
You think I remember '87, man?
I would hope. They basically had a port with boats and things like
they pushed them off a wall.
Prisoner ferries.
Okay, so they would have just taken the boat.
And the other words you're looking for are also on this page, and I'm reading is. Aaron says, "Right now, where to anyways?" Reiner says, "I can't tell you that, but well, think of it as our home village."
But that home village, that's talking about the Mar location, the Mar society.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, remember, they're also presumably from Eldian villages and trying to get Mar citizenship, so it may not be with the rest of where the Mar people are, you know what I mean?
Just within the Mar walls, within Mar
They're
society.
going back to the Mar society, and he's using an analogy that Aaron can understand with a frame of reference that he grew up in.
Okay. So another note that I have is about what we've seen with Zeke having some sort of coordinate type ability, how he was able to turn Titans, or how he was able to turn people into Titans. That power is not the same as the coordinate power, right?
Yeah, and that's a totally different ballgame, too.
I think he just had a box of serums.
Doesn't that mean that Zeke is just one of the 7, or not one of the 7, one of the 9, and that he's not the progenitor? He doesn't have that coordinate power at all?
That's fairly obvious,
Yeah. We still haven't addressed why he looks so different. Of course, I guess they all look different, but he looks like really different.
Okay, I'm still...
Plus, little baby Zeke was playing with a little monkey toy, so there's some foreshadowing there, and maybe, they get to choose their form or something.
I'm still confused, because I'm trying to understand, because the coordinate and the progenitor Titan powers, those are 2 separate powers. There's mind wipes...
Right. So there's the coordinate...
There's the mind wipes, and there's the
mind wipe.
Turn people into Titans powers. Why do Aaron and Zeke both have the control Titan power?
Well, Zeke has only showed it to be in some kind of limited capacity. Because remember, it didn't really listen to him as much as he kind of just commanded authority.
Pointed and
he had to crush the guy's head.
Well, they both did that though, because Aaron made a swarm of Titans attack the Dina Titan, right?
No. But what I'm saying is that Aaron controlled them. You know what I mean? They were mindless. Whereas it seemed like the one the Zeke return to gold still resisted him and still remember he crushed the head of the one guy.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't him. Yeah. So it was that kind of thing where he didn't really have full 100% control in the way that Aaron did with the coordinate power.
But
so
why?
We don't really know if that is the same to that extent.
Okay, so that's what I was wondering. That still doesn't explain why they both have the same type of ability.
And
I don't think that. I think if Zeke has any of that, it's to a lesser extent. I don't think he has the same amount.
I mean, Annie had it to an extent as well with her scream.
Sure.
Fuck, I forgot about that. God damn it.
So it might be just an innate thing that shifters have, but the coordinate is full 100% autopilot.
I was gonna say, is it possible that having the progenitor blood or whatever, the progenitor Titan coordinate actually makes it easier for Aaron to do that?
I think it gives him complete control.
So yeah, he has better control over it than Zeke does, potentially.
When he touches someone of the royal bloodline, yeah.
Right, okay.
So, Zeke.
So, that's another unanswered question then, is that we don't know why there are multiple Titans able to do that.
Well, I think it's unanswered, but I think that's a good, plausible explanation that I gave, that that it's an innate thing of the shifters, but the coordinate is just to a higher degree.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. And I don't think that Zeke's power is turning people into Titans. I think he just probably had a box of serums with him.
Fuck. You think?
And he broke into Ragaku Village at night.
He rolls up into this village under the cover of darkness with a bunch of needles in his backpack, and goes around stabbing people.
Hey kids, want to try this new drug? It's called heroin.
I want to say.
I think if he was trying to get the whole village, I think it would have been an aerosol. thing where he just
I don't know
smashed
if that's possible though, because we know that it evaporates in air.
Well, hold on now.
We know that that's the serums that they had within the walls from the technology they had when it was first built. But remember, we don't know what kind of advances have been made by Zeke and the people outside the walls. In
87, it looked
a lot of years between them.
When somebody gets injected, though, they turn immediately, right?
Yeah.
So how would he be able to take an entire village without people being able to get away?
That's why.
They can stand in a circle and.
He obviously had to administer it all at once, simultaneously.
How?
What he could have done is he could have come in as Titan form, like rounded them all up in like a center village or something, and said, "Take this box. Each of you take one needle, and when I say so, inject yourself."
No,
and then
never would happen.
Boom, 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 boom.
Well,
people would have ran and screamed and fled.
Well, if they ran, he would have just killed them.
Right,
exactly. But do you think people in panic, seeing a Titan come down and try to talk to them, would have actually stood there and listened calmly to his directions instead of just freaking out and doing what people do?
A couple of them, maybe.
Now
that I remember that Connie's mom was literally in her house, I don't think that is as strong.
She must have grew up blew up on the bed.
Not everyone would have reacted the same way. We would have seen people. I think that scenario is a little. I don't think that scenario is feasible for how that played out, just because of the different types of reactions people would have had.
Yeah, I think it's too much to ask the people to. But anyway, the point is, I think it was I think it was administered simultaneously, and I think the only really way that could have been done is via aerosol. It had been some kind of thing where he just gassed the village.
Oh, well, I guess that's possible.
I mean, the Elodians are basically the Jews of this story, so why not gas them?
As if the whole Jewish Nazi analogy has been pounded far enough, already.
That makes
certainly
sense.
Would line up with it.
Well, the Mar are known to have superior technology anyway, so they probably.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. They've had 100-odd years outside the walls to continue developing. Oh gosh, and you know what?
That's a good.
I know this is kind of beating a dead horse, but this goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Remember the whole thing with the king, suppressing technological development within the walls, and the whole thing with the hot air balloon. And whoever got axed for that, well, of course they didn't want them to go out and explore and develop technology, because they would have inevitably, like we said, run into the people outside the walls and eventually start the conflict again.
Well, yeah,
which is why the suppression was so active within.
Imagine if the Elodians had started trying to actually use the resources for themselves instead.
Yeah, no, it would have been.
Ryan, your analogy only works. Your theory only works with the hot air balloons and other transport technology, though. Why would he want to stifle weaponry? That doesn't affect the outside world.
Because he doesn't want he doesn't want the people getting uppity. He doesn't want the potential for revolt. He doesn't want the potential. Remember at the start of the story, the people running the walls were the bad guys, because they were the oppressive people who were ruling with authoritarian, ruling with an iron fist. And of course, it brought up the question: is that real life? If you're surviving, but basically cattle in a pen, et cetera, which was the whole theme from the beginning. But yeah, no, I think with him trying to suppress all kinds of technology and just trying to keep an iron fist over the people, he prevents, I guess the potential of people having the opportunity to rise up and just shake things up at all, whether it's good or bad.
I agree with that. I think arguing that the weaponry or other such, I think that's just kind of a minor grievance. You know what I mean? That could just be a plot detail that was missed. That seems minor to me.
I noticed, though, that they did implement the banned technology when it was with regards to suppressing, revolt movements, because it was used for the Kenny squad when they were trying to take down the scouts who were
that's
working
basic
against
authoritarian. Make sure your military, your bodyguards have the best technology.
Right. So they said, you guys can stop developing technology, but we'll keep doing it so we can keep you down. So I think it does fit in with what we've already seen so far in the story.
Or maybe not that they develop it themselves as much as they keep the best stuff for themselves, and then whenever someone develops something new, they kill them and take it for themselves.
Well, yeah, I mean, the point is just that they're using it to control the population and preventing the population themselves from independently doing it.
I think that's solid. I agree with that. So the next question I wanted to ask is about Ymir, since we haven't talked about Ymir a lot. So just to establish this, to create the ground zero for this discussion, we talked about how Ymir Fritz is the one who made the deal with the devil, who gave the Elodians the Titan powers. But Ymir Fritz died eventually, and her soul transferred to some other person, and it kind of descended from there, right?
9 times. Isn't that where it gets messy? Because somehow didn't she become 9 different Titans?
She was literally a cat.
Yeah, they do a little
You have
horse
to remember that this is a 2,000-year-old history. And like any 2,000-year-old book, there is going to be misinformation. Things are not going to be accurate.
The question
We don't know that that's 100% how it happened.
There's a literary device called an unreliable narrator.
Yeah,
it's very common in literature, and what it is just saying that this information that was passed on via a character, may not be. It's not word of God. It may be unreliable. Based on
which is funny because word of God is literally what I was talking about. But okay.
The question that I was
getting into a whole different thing.
The question that I was going to ask is unrelated to that anyway. The question that I was going to ask is about our Ymir and her interaction with Reiner and Berthold in the forest in chapter 46, where there was some hostility between the two.
Well, yeah, she took the Titan powers, one of their precious 7 Titan powers.
Well, I wonder if it's more than that, though, because she had information about Zeke, and Reiner and Berthold were hostile towards her, I guess because she knew that stuff, but also, did Reiner and Berthold have the information about Ymir? Did they know what she was, or what she inherited, I guess?
Oh, of course they got fully brainwashed. They got told Ymir's people are the bad people. They are the ones that enslaved and raped and murdered and gassed and all this stuff that we're guilty of.
As Ymir's soul transferred over the years, did that information about her carry over?
I think that's a good question, and I don't think we know the answer, but I would also like to bring up another earlier event just to kind of reinforce this. The whole OVA thing at the beginning with the Ymir-sama.
With Ilsa.
Yeah, with
Ilsa,
yeah. And her note. Yeah, exactly. Because obviously the Titan out there recognized her and recognized the importance, and that would have been one of the people who in 87 we find out were turned into wild Titans, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's correct. That is one of the Titan is one of the people that was kicked off from the revival.
Well, either that or they were moved already there before that. Because remember the point is they were already Titans.
No, they had the same face.
Oh, okay.
As one of the people in the background.
Well, when those people were kicked off the walls, there were still already wild Titans in there. They were just deeper in, away from the ocean, is what they were saying.
But this specific one, just like all the Titans in Trost and the Ymir Titan were in this group that were kicked off in 87. Like, sure. Isayama did that specifically. But I think it is of note that first, the Titan says Ymir's people, or
Ymir's people being Elodian.
A citizen of Ymir, or whatever it says, meaning Elodian.
Right.
And then, like, Ymir-sama, welcome, which could mean that they just believe, like, Ymir lives on in all of us.
Right.
Or that
Titan,
it was literally Ymir.
That Titan was in the Elodian Resistance, and in the Elodian Resistance, they worshipped more or less Ymir.
Yeah.
So when this Titan saw Ilsa and thought that she was Ymir, she was like, hey, what
I'm saying is that it might have just said that because she's an Elodian. And he said, oh shit, I'm inside the walls, you're an Elodian, you're Ymir's people.
Well, I felt like there was a lot of emphasis. No, I thought there was a lot of emphasis like focused on the similarity in looks between Ilsa and Ymir, right?
There is that too, yeah.
Maybe,
but it could be disinformation that Isayama spread on her.
Yeah, what I got of it is that he recognized her and thought it was her because
if he thought it was Ymir, maybe he thought somewhere in his Titan brain that, hey, this is the person who can fix all the things for us.
Well, yeah, and remember he was trying his hardest not to eat her, and then he ate her anyway because he couldn't help it. But he tried pretty hard.
Credit to that guy. He was a fucking trooper, that guy.
Well, she didn't really do much. She just let herself get eaten.
So, to what we were talking about earlier with the chapters 87.
She did try to run.
Yeah, she didn't do a very good job.
You try running from a Titan.
This is
I'm here right now, am I?
I have a chapter 87 question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. When we were talking about when they were kicking them off the walls with that, was our Ymir in that group?
No,
I didn't
she wasn't.
see her.
Or was that like
there was only one woman, and it was Dina.
Okay, so she was in like the next generation.
Plus, Ymir was a Titan for 60 years.
Yeah, she was already on the island as a mindless Titan at that point.
For like 50 years already.
Right, okay, right. Fuck.
At least if she's telling the truth.
How the fuck am I supposed to keep all that straight? God damn.
She was thrown there with one of the initial... Because remember, the point is that they had just been sporadically putting Elodians on the island and turning them into Titans, I guess, just... at times, like, they're over the past, like, 100-odd years. Which means, another interesting thing we should point out is that it's clear that the people outside the walls of the Mare were the people who developed the technology to turn people into mindless Titans via the serum.
Not necessarily.
Which didn't seem to exist.
Not necessarily. Because because the Elodians had all the Titans to begin with. Like, they had Mindless Titans. Like, when they showed...
we explained how Mindless Titans, like, are a thing, how, like, the serum came about?
No, we haven't been explained that, but it's...
Some science shit that I haven't explained yet.
Yeah, pretty much. But, like, when we look at the pictures, like, of the Ymir book and all that, you see, like, drawings of Titans holding up bridges and stuff. Pretty sure that's the same way they built the walls, is they turned someone into a Titan.
Well, I guess that's true.
Think
of all the colossal Titans they had to make the walls.
Right.
That was something.
So it was the Elodians who came up with the technology.
We didn't address that. There was another piece of the story from Grish's dad about of the Elodians, the original ones, about how after all the raping and the oppressing and all that bad stuff, that Ymir, didn't it say that the Elodians with Ymir created like a utopia? Because So why would that be in the propaganda that they created a really kick-ass society that was great?
It wasn't.
Well,
it was in the hidden banned text that the owl gave Grisha.
Okay. I'd have to reread the chapter to see that.
And they talk about the progenitor Titan has the power to control all other Titans, which means that there had to have been Mindless Titans.
So the quote is, in other words, it was wealth that our ancestor Ymir brought to mankind. She enriched the people and developed this continent.
Right.
Right, okay.
So the question is, how do these people become mindless in the first place?
Right.
Before the serum was invented. And also, I think this is kind of not to sidetrack us too much, but this goes back to the fact that we've had serum within the walls, and who knows how long the Rices had that. And remember the serum with the Braun family name on it? And how that all relates now to Reiner's family, not only his family, but I guess his Elodian ancestors who may have been involved with all the people at the start. So this could all be tracing back like way back to the beginning.
So we also...
and before we move on, I do want to go back to the Ilsa Lengnarth thing. So I have the official translation here. The Titan starts out, a subject of Ymir, like an Elodian, someone, Ymir's people.
Right.
Sure.
Then it bows, and then it says, Lady Ymir, well met. So, I don't know if he is specifically thinking that Ilsa is Ymir, or if it's...
If he's just addressing another Elodian.
Right, I think he's addressing an Elodian, and then, because the spirit of Ymir lives on within all Elodians, blah, 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 he's talking to the spirit within her in the next line.
That's fucked up. How would he be able to do that? How would he know that the spirit was in this fucking ghost shit, man?
Well, it's religion, dude. Don't question the logic. It is religion.
Oh, Zach, settle down. We're not gonna get into
shit
that.
In this spirits and all this. I didn't sign up for this. This ain't what I signed up for.
We're not implying that he can like fucking smell her soul or whatever.
I'm saying that they probably religiously believe that like Ymir created this. We're all descendants of Ymir. Part of Ymir is within us. Blah blah blah.
Well, there's like apparently a certain amount of truth to that. If from what we've seen out of the whole,
they're all genetically related. Yeah,
bloodlines. Yeah, because the bloodlines are obviously important, and now we know that the Elodians have specific qualities that allow them to be mind wiped. I guess.
I'm titanized.
I'm only fine with this because of the politics surrounding it.
I mean, you might also be giving them too much credit, because do you remember that they did know that they were an island full of Elodians when they got turned into Titans? Who else could he possibly be talking to?
Right, exactly.
How much intelligence does this Titan have?
Which is why I'm saying the Titan didn't need to be intelligent to recognize that that's automatically an Elodian.
Well, okay, think of it this way. Remember from Ymir's recollection, when she was a Mindless Titan, she still saw and knew what was going on the whole time. She just had no control. That's what the recollections have been from people who get turned back.
But he was so strong in his beliefs and his convictions that he was able to overcome the mindlessness.
Overrule it. But then it obviously...
the need to eat overcame that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then he did eat her, but that was all in good fun.
I think I follow that. So, another topic we brought up previously that we didn't find anything, I don't think we went full circle on, was Annie's dad. And what the relationship was between Annie's dad and Annie. So, Annie, we know, is one of the children that was sent to the island to be a child soldier, whatever you want to call that.
Yeah.
So that scene we saw at the end of the anime between Annie's dad and Annie, where Annie's dad is crying, is because... ? It's because he was sending her away and he had no control over it? Or, ? another theory I was thinking about earlier is is it possible that he was a member of the Resistance, and that she turned him in as well? Because she kind of hates him.
That's not impossible, which would explain why she has so much seemingly remorse for everything.
Well, I mean, she has a love-hate relationship with her dad, where she was ideology. She had a kind of sarcastic kind of hate for his ideology. Like she knew that he was convinced of his beliefs, and she respected that about him, but knew he was dumb. That's kind of like a love thing, kind of. But she also hated him for the training that he made her do and all the, prep work that he put into her before she got sent off.
What exactly did her dad say? I forget.
Something about the world hating her?
It was foil for Annie. Basically, it said, even if the whole world treats you as its enemy, you'll always have me.
Because she's Elodian. And the mayor would all treat her as an enemy. Well, the people that she's going to be sent off to will treat her as an enemy.
The Mar already hate her.
Stiller, let me butt in here. So even if you get honorary citizenship, you're still a filthy Elodian.
Right.
The mayor are still going to treat you like dirt. Probably even more so because you're in front and center more than normal.
Right. As of this chapter, that makes total sense because the Mar hate her. The people on the island are going to hate her, and the Elodians that are still on the Mar island probably won't like her either for going and being a Mar soldier now. So everyone would hate her.
Better than them and getting more privileges.
Dude, shades of the boss, right?
So, yeah.
Some Metal Gear Solid shit.
It kind of is. But I don't know if I still don't think we have a full explanation for that scene between her dad and Annie. Maybe it's a combination.
I'm trying to find it.
Maybe it's a combination of the things.
Well, I'm still not discounting the possibility that there is ulterior motives involved with that. The fact that she may not be 100% with the mayor.
Why would he?
Something just seems very off about her relationship compared to that. And remember how she's talking about even though Reiner and Bert apparently come from the mayor as well. I mean, sorry, come from Elodia as well because of the fact that they got the Titan powers, like Zach pointed out. That means that she's still an outsider compared to them, though. So, like, what is the difference there?
Why would Annie's dad say to me, "You'll still have me"? Specifically,
it could be that her dad was an Elodian revivalist. She was recruited, then he was found out and sent to paradise. But he's still waiting back home for her, though.
Isn't it?
I think you're reading too much into it. I think he's literally just saying, as on the face value, like it sounds, is like, you're gonna have to do this mission where the people who are sending you on this mission hate you, and the people who you're on the mission against hate you. But I won't hate you.
Okay, yeah, and Reiner and Berthold might have just questioned her because they're more 100% into the ideology, and she might be appearing to be wavering.
Yeah, and again, like I said, if there's a possibility that he's also saying, I'm asking you to do something above and beyond what they're asking to do in the sense of like either double crossing or just some kind of Elodian mission or whatever. I don't know, some kind of justification. He may be involving that as well, and just saying, by the way, sorry you have to do this, but it's fairly important.
I was gonna
and this, I still think, like we brought up earlier about the whole Zeke parallels. I don't want to say for sure, but I would not be surprised to see it go down that way, where she's going to be what Zeke was supposed to be. I don't know, maybe not.
Well, I was gonna say that line could have meant that he had some kind of other plan that she would be carrying out, which is what.
Thank you. That's what I was trying to get at.
Yeah,
I just couldn't.
It would have been right at the point where Eren was going to rip her out of the back of the neck of the Titan,
which didn't happen in the manga, though.
Oh, God, fucking damn it! That's the absolute worst. Why? Oh.
I hope they don't do that too much with season 2.
God, that's terrible.
Like, I want an explanation for why the fuck he goes fire form, and then never have it appear again.
It was just stylistic, wasn't it?
We've never seen anything like that in the manga, where that's had any kind of impact on anything ever.
I thought we established that was just like a visual quirk, just like for emphasis.
That's probably what it was, just to make it look cool.
Yeah.
But
still, everyone else is gonna think, like, oh shit, he's got like an alternate form or something. He's got Titan Mega Evolution.
Yeah,
well, they're free to think that, but it doesn't make it true.
It's just
right, people are going to want to know why it doesn't reappear and stuff like that.
It's inconvenient when it's a visual detail instead of a plot detail.
You know what? Season 2 has
it's Chekhov's gun.
maybe it will reappear in the anime.
Right, and that's what I'm saying is I want it to be explained and then not. Like, reappear, explain why it reappears, and then make it stop being a thing so it stops creating inconsistencies.
I agree with that. Anything to stop inconsistencies, I'm fine with.
Because when you start deviating from the manga, you get worse and worse until you get Tokyo Ghoul.
What was the first line he said? He said, I'm sorry that
What I did was wrong.
What I did was wrong.
What I did was wrong. I'm not going to ask you to forgive me after all this.
See,
happened.
that throws a wrinkle into it. What did he do?
I wonder if he's just referring to the fact that he kind of sacrificed her childhood in order to train her for this mission that he knew was going to happen. And then when I say this mission, I mean not just the mission, but whatever, again, potential
or
ulterior
the
motive.
fact that he sold her out to the mayor.
I don't know. That seems a little boring,
Yeah.
though. I don't think that's feasible. I don't know. Where's the mother, though?
Could be. I mean, what was she, only like, 12?
She's like 12, yeah, something like that at the time.
Maybe her mom's dead.
Maybe her mom on the island as a mindless titan.
He did something. I feel he did something.
I think it's that he gave her to the mayor.
Well, she was picked, though.
He sacrificed her childhood and is going to make her turn into a Titan shifter.
Right, but it's like a volunteer thing, not just a randomly drawn...
Well, if they didn't have enough volunteers, they would have picked people by force.
Probably.
They're going to have volunteers. When they're offering citizenship, they're going to have
benefit.
hundreds of volunteers, thousands of volunteers.
I don't know.
They're going to have so many volunteers, you don't know what to do with the volunteers. You're going to take the volunteers, you're going to build a wall. You're going to make Mexico pay for it. It's going to be great.
I still think that he did something else because of that line.
How much do you want to bet that Annie's mom is on the island as a mindless titan?
No, I believe...
No, listen. The reason is a result of something that he did.
That would be.
See, what if that, like, if he in some, whether intentional or not, in the process of, getting them to the point they are now, that happened.
Well, where would she have gotten what would she have turned back from if her mom was a Titan?
What do you mean?
No, she would have gotten syringe, right? So
yeah,
she gets
like
syringe.
after Annie was born, her mom was taken out of the picture.
The syringe doesn't turn you into a shifter, though. So who did she eat?
No, it turns you into a mindless. Who?
No, that's not. Annie's not.
Who did Annie eat?
I don't know.
Who did Annie eat?
One of the old Titans. You have the same question about Reiner and Bertholdt and Zeke, but that's not what Ryan's talking about.
Well, no, the reason I asked that was because you would assume that if she turned into a mindless Titan, that she would have eaten her mom.
Well, still, remember this way.
No. He's saying while Annie was growing up, her dad did something that caused her mom to be sent to be turned into a mindless Titan.
But that's not what Stiller's saying. Stiller's asking, who did she eat?
Right. Stiller's asking.
Here's my answer: is because there's only 7 Titans that they have available at any given time. It means that she, would have had to eaten whoever, the last person or child or whoever had that power, and was deemed for whatever reason to have to now pass it on.
So there's a question too.
It's basically the exact same way that the Rice passed down their powers.
So isn't there a question here about why they just have Titan shifters sitting the fuck around in the Mar not doing anything?
Maybe they do. Maybe they're using
their weapons.
Maybe exactly.
Using them on who?
The other people that they're oppressing. That's what they say, is that the reason they're developing new weaponry is because their 7 Titan shifters are no longer going to be the supreme weapons in the world.
That doesn't say that they're using those shifters to attack people, though. That's just saying that they
rule by fear. Rule by fear.
But they could have just had a standing military that could have done that. They didn't have to use the shifters for that.
Well, they're not. Still, you're assuming that they're using the shifters. It's possible they were just having them on standby.
That's the part that I want to know why for.
To make because they have to keep it. Because if you don't use it, you lose it. I mean, think of it this way: they have to continue to pass down that power from generation to generation, even if they don't. Because otherwise, they won't be able to use it when they do need it.
What do you mean if they don't use it, they lose it? They could have just sent the shifters they had on standby.
If the Titan shifter dies without passing on the power,
Stiller finish.
by being eaten by somebody else, then they're gone. The power's gone forever. So they have to continue passing it down every generation, not using it as in actually going out and smashing shit up with it, but having to do the process of turning someone into a mindless Titan, eating the Titan shifter so it passes down to the new person.
That's fine.
You know that as a Titan shifter, your life is forfeited.
Ryan, Stiller understands that. Stiller, finish what you were going to say.
No, I think that's fine. That was a good clarification, but I think that part of it is fine. What I'm saying is, why don't they have the ones that are on standby supporting the ones they sent out into the field?
Would you send all of your weapons out at once?
Not all of them, but a lot of them.
Haven't they?
The risk
Zeke,
is that
Reiner, Bertel, Annie,
Yeah.
and Marcel. That's 5. They sent 5 of 7.
Yeah, and it didn't work out.
But again, remember, they were trying to go with stealth, not smash and grab.
I mean, if they're confident in their, in their suppression
Gotta
ability,
keep some in
as it
reserve
was,
just in case. Because if they send all 7 and all 7 get beat, well, they're fucked.
Well,
Now the Elodians have all 9 shifters again.
But they were getting ready to throw out all the shifter powers anyway, because they're getting ready to develop new technology.
They're not just going to get rid of
No,
it.
I don't think they were throw. I think they were developing new technology like in tandem with the shifting powers.
it's
with
going
the
to be
knowledge that it's going to be there for
supplementary.
support.
I
Yeah.
want to believe that so hard, because this is the second time I've brought that up, because I think it's fucking stupid that they're not. Why would you not?
Well, once you have a
because
tank,
I bet they have a
you
good
don't
reason
really
they haven't
need a
revealed it yet.
shifter.
Say that again, Zach?
Once you have a tank, you don't really need a shifter.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Why the fuck don't they? Or aren't they doing those two
Maybe
things
they
at the same time?
Maybe they only developed the technology recently. If they didn't have the need for it, was the thing.
Right. That's what I was saying
No,
earlier,
yeah.
is that
They
because
always had
their rule
plans.
was absolute until now, they didn't bother developing technology until now, and then they went, oh shit, in order to continue down this path, we need the shit that's under Paradise Island.
I don't believe that, because the Mars seemed like the kind of people who were always going to go after the Elodians, no matter for nowhere. There didn't have to be a
But
reason.
they had the threat of, if you touch this, we will destroy the world.
There didn't have to be a reason for the Mar to want to go to war with the Elodians anyway.
Think about why we don't touch North Korea.
Well, that's an entirely different situation. But the point is that out of sight, out of mind. I think the idea is that they were saying, well, they're not a threat and they're not bothering us, and we know as long as we don't touch them, they're not gonna, they're not gonna break down the walls.
I get
Now,
that.
it wasn't until they needed resources that they say, okay, now we can't ignore them anymore. We have to actually deal with this because we need that. Up until that, they were content just leaving them alone because they were just out of sight, out of mind.
I get that, but I don't believe that, because the Mars seem like, because they're the big bad, that they're the more warlike, and they're the ones that would have instigated this to begin with, resources or not.
But they also think that the Eldians have millions of Titans that can be just let go, millions of colossal Titans at that could just be let go at the snap of a finger to destroy the planet. You're not going to fuck with that. That's a nuke.
That just creates the need to try and speed up production on your military tech faster.
Which they can't do
Which they did.
without
Maybe
the resources under the
Maybe
island.
this was the fastest they were able to do it.
I really don't like that. I really don't like
What
that.
do you do when you have a big crazy guy with a nuke?
You
leave him the fuck alone. That is literally what we do with North Korea.
I don't agree with what you're saying, Zach, but I can see what Ryan's saying, and I can see that that's a feasible answer to this question, but I really don't like that. You know what I mean? I really hate that they're just fucking sitting on their hands.
We don't know their motives yet. We don't know why they did what they did because we only can make guesses and assumptions
They
based on
look
the
down
information.
on the
They
Elodians.
said it in 86 and 87, mainly in 87, but the three of us haven't reread 87 yet, so we don't have that detail
They
with the exact
look
specifications as
down
well.
on the Elodians, and they hate these people, and they think they're a bunch of shits, and they should all die.
But if they go after them, then the dead man switch goes off and the nuke explodes.
Well, if you
millions of Titans go and destroy the planet.
If you're worried about that conflict, that's why you start trying to ramp up your military production, and now we're back to square one. So that
Which they
threat
can't do
is
without.
not the problem here.
But they can't ramp up the military production without the resources on the island.
Which is
So they're stuck with just having their 7 Titans.
we're full circle here, because this is why I'm saying they should have been producing at the same time.
Well, again,
They were.
remember, back when the split happened, way back in the day, they were a lot less technologically developed. They didn't have the technology they did now. It's
didn't have
possible that
Zeppelins,
only
they
in
didn't have
recent
lights.
history have they made the developments. Because remember, we saw them back in the day with blimps, and now they're talking about actual airplanes. It's only recently that they've made the developments that may even make it feasible to go over there and launch an attack. So it may have been something that they've been planning to do for a long time, but just didn't have the means to do so. Now
Right.
they have the technology to do it and are looking for the resources to back it
They
up.
start the day off. They start the game with 7 shifters. So let's say we're playing Civilization. That would be 7 Gatling guns, right? You continue through the game of Civilization. Your tech tree evolves. And then you get to the point where your technology surpasses the Gatling guns, right? That's what they've been doing. Right now, they're one step below the Gatlings, but in order to go any farther, they need to attack the island.
Yeah, but if you're playing a civilization game, you have other territories that you can go to. That you don't have to fucking focus on that island. You can go elsewhere. You can get your production from other means.
Well, yeah, that's not always necessarily true, because if you think about it in a real world perspective, there are a lot of times where, yes, sometimes different resources can be found in different areas, but it's not economically viable or efficient or profitable enough to actually go after that in small quantities. Whereas you have to find places where
way 86,
there is a decent enough concentration to make it worthwhile.
Mainly 87 info. The way the info is presented, it makes it sound like the whole world is at a Cold War state.
Based on what? Was there something that said that?
We can guess, but we really don't know that.
There's a reason they need to ramp up their military technology.
Because they want to go after the Elodians.
No, they want to go after the rest of the world.
There were other external threats besides the Elodians.
That's also true, though. Those things, they're not mutually exclusive.
Hey, Marley now uses the power of the Seven Titans to maintain its position as leader of the world, America. But the day will come soon when this power is no longer absolute. China. We are sure to see an age where military power backed by fuel determines the state of the world.
Not there, but that's not the point.
What?
I don't see these things as mutually exclusive.
They're not. They're not. Yeah. This all can be happening simultaneously and developing along itself. Remember, it's a complex situation, and geopolitics are complex in the real world too.
And they didn't
it's never a simple cause and effect.
Steamboats and planes. Otherwise, the wall people would have that too. Those technologies have evolved.
No, we have a reason for why the wall people aren't doing that. It's because they're suppressed by the Rice family.
They would have still brought electric lights and stuff with them. They would have brought the steamboats for their rivers instead of using whatever the fuck that conveyor belt system is that we saw in the first episode.
I'm not sure what you're saying, because the Rice family would have controlled all of this.
Right, but if that technology existed when the walls were built, they would have brought it with them and then prevented evolution. They wouldn't have said, okay, let's just castrate our technological standpoint by 500 years.
You're basically saying the same thing, but from two different sides. I mean, the idea is just that they, the people in the walls had the potential to develop alongside the people outside the walls, but were intentionally put on a damper from within.
Right. And
can we hold on?
And what Zach is trying to establish to you is that at the point when the people from the wall, when the initial split happened and they went to the island, they were technologically equal.
Let's
and
now if it wasn't.
The mayor have continued to work on their military.
Now hold on.
But in order to work on it anymore, they need Paradisi Island and the fossil fuels there.
I want to let me table this. We need to.
No, I don't think it's about working on it more. I think it's just about now scale. It's the fact that they have the technology they need. They just can't mass produce it in the way that they would like.
Right, that too.
The argument is that the question is, why aren't the Mar developing their military at the same time that they're trying to have these child soldiers go out and fuck up the Elodians? Right.
And the answer is they are.
They are.
So the answer is they are, or just not to the level that I want them to. It takes a long time.
They are, but they have gotten to the point where they can't do it any further without the shit on the island.
So they are doing what I want them to do. They're just doing it at a pace that I don't.
They have done what you want to do to the best of their ability,
but they still fall short.
They have to get to the island to continue doing what you want them to do.
Let's put it this way for comparison. Let's look at the birth of flight, 1906.
Fuck, I don't know.
Kitty Hawk, Wright Flyer.
Yeah.
Or I said the modern airplane. We may as well call it that. Obviously, the history of flight goes back long farther than that. But the point is that look at the turn of the century, 1900, and then from that point, how long it took us through industrialization and the birth of the airplane and different technology like that, automobiles, in order to get to where we were, let's say 1969, landing a guy on the moon, modern day computer super technological as they are, right?
I would say 1969 is modern day, but okay.
No, I mean ahead to modern day when we're the information age we're in right now. And you say, okay, well, that was about 100 years of development in a situation where we had 2 world wars, numerous other conflicts, but the important thing was the advent of, obviously, globalization. We look at these guys, the same time frame, say about 100 years, from when the wall went up and when it is now, but with the additional drawback of having, I guess, what looks like a much more fractured world, the presence of Titans, and that threat and all the conflicts they had that were holding them back. It's not unreasonable. It's not unreasonable to say that it took them this long. And you know what? Maybe we're setting the starting point too far back. Maybe instead of comparing 1900, we should be comparing, say, 1800s.
Well, what you're saying
is, it's even like I think they're on track.
What you're saying is the drawback is because they're Titans, but
I'm saying that we can't compare it 1-to-1 scale with the modern time frame because the situations aren't the same. There are other factors and the variables are different.
Well, you're saying that those other factors.
I am just saying that I don't think they're necessarily out of place in terms of how fast they're doing it. I don't think they're too slow compared to where they should be.
The factors that you're saying are different. Are that there are Titans, there's a Cold War, the world's fucked up because of it.
Well, I don't see the point Ryan's trying to make at all. Actually, I agree with you here, Stiller. It doesn't. I don't see how they are equivalent in the slightest, but
they are, because what Stiller's trying to say is he's saying they're taking too long to develop their technologies, and I'm saying no, they're not. They're on schedule.
No, I think Stiller's point is they haven't been developing their technology. My point is they have. So they started out with 7
guys are all
Titans.
saying the exact same thing. What are y'all on about?
That's also not mutually exclusive. Those can both be my point.
Thank you. Yeah,
they started out with 7 Titans. That's like 7 Abrams tanks in World War I. Since then, they have been bringing their technology up to parity with those Titans so they no longer have to rely on them. But they have reached the point where they cannot evolve any further with their current resources.
You understand that's literally what we've been saying, right?
The goal should not be...
Not Stiller.
The goal should not be to match that point. The goal should be to go past that.
It is.
Well, that's what they're trying to do.
It is.
But that's
the day
not what you're saying.
will come soon.
That
the
is
day
exactly
will
the
come
same.
soon
Really
when this power is no longer absolute. We are sure to see an age where military power backed by fuel determines the state of the world. As we approach this age, Marley can no longer afford to ignore the island of Paradise, which is said to have massive amounts of fossil fuels buried under it.
So, to go by your analogy, what I'm saying is that when you get to the point where you're one step behind this level where you make the switch, instead of going to that level where you're equal, you aim to go past that so that you can...
They are aiming to go past it, but they need to conquer the hurdle of resources first.
You have to bypass that level where you're at the same level as your Titans that you're willing to switch with.
Well, that's what they're in the process of doing.
They can't bypass yet. They need the ability to bypass first.
I guess I don't know what you mean by bypassing.
I think we're going in circles.
Yeah, this is a bad conversation. We need to move. We need to pick it up.
I will let the people in the comments just set Stiller straight.
Well,
I know in 2 weeks, Stiller, you're gonna post this, and then people are gonna comment about it on Reddit, and I'm gonna now that makes sense.
We should get shit
or
on
maybe
for this episode.
In the next chapter or something, like how you realize after the Rice arc, oh shit, I've been wrong about this entire arc.
Well, no,
I don't think Stiller is wrong as much as they're just, I think, a misunderstanding in what we're talking about.
Right, that's what I'm saying, is that I'm not saying he's wrong, I'm saying it's going to come clear to him eventually.
No, I still stand by the mind wipe thing being bullshit, just like...
Well, that's a different story, because that is bullshit.
I know, you have, but the...
I don't think this is like that. I think this is, honestly, when you think about it, this is a pointless discussion, because...
No, Ryan, I'm not saying it's like that in that Stiller's misunderstanding. I'm saying it's like that in that he's going to change his mind later and go, oh shit, that's what you meant.
Maybe.
What I was getting
ready to say is we should be getting shit on for this episode anyway because of all the questions we have to ask because we don't understand what the fuck's going on.
Yeah, and either way,
nobody does.
So far off topic. We're arguing about this that has really nothing to do with what we've learned. Yeah, it's irrelevant.
I mean, people are understanding this better than we are, so we're going to get shit for that.
Yeah, well,
I think I understand it about as well as anyone.
I'm still not sure that I do.
No, I know you don't. You two are still pretty like wishy-washy on this. But yes, that was a Pokemon joke. But
that's not why I was laughing.
But I think that it's pretty clear to me.
So yeah, the next line that I had written down just to show you where my mind was at when I wrote this or when I read the chapter for the first time, what I wrote down next was a clarification that Historia's blood is of the King Fritz line. As a, hey, that's right?
We're talking with the OG Fritz, right? Not the fake one?
Right.
Yes.
So that should have said the Rice instead of the Fritz. And then the next, 4 or 5 lines I have are like, hey, the Rice plan, that was the thing that happened. This ties into that.
What the fuck are these notes you took?
Here's a line about, okay, Grishin knew that the Rices were the Elodian royal family that didn't want to fight tomorrow, yet they held the progenitor to power. We know that. We figured that out.
Well, he didn't go in knowing it. He obviously took some time.
This is why Grisha stole the progenitor power and gave it to Eren, knowing he'd be pursued. Meanwhile, the Rice wanted to give the power to Historia so they could resume the mind wipes.
Well, no. The Rice wanted to keep the power for themselves and not go outside the walls. Grisha said, well, we should restore Lodia, and the Rice said, fuck that. So Grisha
that
got
was
pissed.
me trying to rationalize the conflicts of the Rice arc, where Grisha wanted Eren to have the power, and Historia was going to have the power so that she could resume Mind Wipes. That's what happened there, as I understand it. I still hate that fucking part of the story, by the way.
Rod just wanted it... this is probably my turn to misunderstand, like Stiller did, but I think Rod just wanted it back to resume the Rice, not necessarily resume the Mind Wipes, but to resume the Rice being in power.
Again, that's not mutually exclusive.
Speaking of which, goddamn, I'm hungry now.
That's not.
I want rice.
That's not mutually exclusive. Both of those things, I think, are the point there.
Okay, fair.
Okay, so there's another line I wrote down. Grisha at some point said to Eren, "Vengeance for your mother. You will be the one to take it." And that's referring to Eren taking the power of Progenitor and the Coordinate.
Yeah.
Frida gained the history of the Mar and Elodians when she inherited the Progenitor Titan. We talked about that. The will of the first king refers to King Fritz, who originally had the Progenitor Titan power, created the walls, and used the army of Titans to keep the Mar at bay. And it does not refer to some sort of ghost who's still influencing people.
No, they're one and the same.
That's what I wrote down, but it actually is that he has some sort of influence on the people.
Yeah, they're one and the same.
So,
Yeah.
Fucking goddamn it! I imagine I wrote that down hoping that the last part of that wasn't the case.
You wrote it in disbelief?
Yeah, I wrote that down hoping that was going to be true, and it turns out.
Well, isn't that what the whole will of the first king thing was about? His
Yeah,
influence?
exactly.
Yeah.
So,
It's like-
Ryan, that's what we're saying. Is that we're saying that it's true, and Siller's like, oh god, no.
I write these things. I write these things because I don't want them to be true.
Just
Yeah,
think of it like Stargate with the bad guys.
This is why
I know you guys don't know, but you should know.
I mean, these kind of things are why I said I was numb in the beginning, because there are things that I don't want to exist that exist, and now this is where the story is going, and I have to live with it now. So, I guess I'm dealing with it.
You know, Stiller, you can always resign from the podcast. We can always find someone new.
I
You hate the story that much.
I don't know if that's true.
I don't hate. I don't hate the story. I just wish it had
You just
gone.
bitch about every new thing.
Because I wanted it. I wanted it to go.
I hate the Mind Wipes. I hate this arc. I hate this revelation.
I wanted. It's because I wanted it to go differently. That's it.
It's legitimate as a fan.
Unfortunately,
of a series to be
Stiller,
able to
you
express
are
your
not Isayama.
Say that again, Ryan.
Well, it's legitimate as a fan of a series to be able to express your disappointment. Just because you're disappointed in the way a story turns out doesn't mean you hate a story. It just means that, everybody can reserve the right to have their opinions about how it wants to do it. You're right, he's not Isayama, and that's why he can be disappointed about the directions Isayama has chosen to take it.
That's why
It doesn't mean he hates the series. It just means that,
He's a little bitch.
See,
No.
that's why I use the word
you don't
numb.
understand how critics work.
That's why I use the word numb instead of disappointed, because I don't hate the series. I just wish it had gone differently.
No, yeah, and that's not. I don't think that's a
hate the
bad
series.
thing.
You just hate everything that's happened to it in the last 3 years.
I don't know if I can argue with that. That's
You don't hate the series. You just hate 50% of the series.
Yeah, I mean, 50s is kind of high.
You're right. At this point, it's 40%, but it's going to continue going this way until it's the majority. Still.
Yeah, I know. It's. I hate saying that because I feel like I'm supposed to, and for the most part, enjoy it.
I would hope you would if you're running a podcast on it and a subreddit on it.
We
just saying.
I was like a
No.
late sophomore or early
Ryan, you
junior
don't
in
understand.
college when we started the podcast, and things were totally different back then.
Things were totally different back then.
And now
The story is less complex.
it's turned into some kind of deformed monster that I don't recognize. And I got
like a Titan.
I got the bits in it still that got me into it, but
We started right at the Rice arc, though.
I mean,
Right.
Let me put it this way. I like the story still, and I like where it's at, and I like where it's going, and I think it's really interesting what he's done. But it is a far cry to the series we all remember at Trost arc at the very beginning, where they're swinging around on their fancy flying wires, chopping Titans down.
it's sad.
Killed left and right. It's it's fucking real out there.
I had
It's
that
different.
reaction.
It's not bad. It's just different. The story's evolved.
I had that reaction to the game when Chapter 86 came out, because I bought the game that came out like however many months ago, and I was really loving the game, and then this chapter came out, and it was like, oh, these are Elodians, this is what's going on with the politics and that, and I was like, well, fuck the game, because that's not the same thing anymore.
Do you remember way back when the political arc happened?
Yeah.
And there was a lot of discontent among the fan base in general, because there was a lot of feeling of, this is very interesting with a lot of like the information, but it's like a lot of people were saying, it's boring. And they were saying like, this isn't like the series was, earlier on. And I think this is kind of a similar thing where we're getting a lot of information, a lot of super useful background, and a lot of questions are getting answered in regards to the plot. But, it's a different feel from some of for example, just the previous arc where it was very high octane. A lot of stuff was going on.
Well,
so it's kind of like going back and forth, and it's, dips and swales, and you get a bit of a mixed reaction from people based on kind of what the tone and what the pace of the story is at a given time.
I guess it's like an evolved form of that, because at the time the argument was that, it's not about killing Titans anymore, it's not, it's not conflict, it's not whatever, it's just all internal politics bullshit.
Conflict, just in a different medium.
Yeah, so now this is why I said this is an evolved form of it, because this is kind of like that, except we're not seeing a lack of conflict, we're seeing just how the story has kind of evolved.
Keep in mind, we're also not talking about our favorite protagonists, the characters we've spent so much time worrying about for the last, story up until this point. So it's
we are talking about literally everyone that we are learning about right now is dead.
Yeah,
and most of these characters we're seeing for the first and sometimes last times. So it's easy to kind of get taken out of it and being like, what's even going on here when it seems very ancillary to the story itself at a lot of points, even though it's obviously very important, like in the terms of progression of the protagonists and our main characters. Obviously we don't even see all this chapter.
See, that was the other problem I had, though.
Our first chapter that we recorded a podcast for was the one where it was revealed that Titans were humans, and it was where Erwin was trying to convince Pixis to go against the military.
See, the other problem I have with this is that I never attached to our main characters. I think most of our main characters suck.
Well, I wouldn't disagree.
So...
Dilla, remind me what you do like about this series?
That's a good question.
Exactly.
But there are things, like I really enjoy...
Things. Okay, you like things. Good.
I enjoy... I enjoy the political drama.
Really? Really? Because I remember you doing nothing but bitch and moan during the political drama.
Well, another thing.
No, there's a difference between the political arc and what happened with the Rices. There was a split there. The stuff with overthrowing the military police and the corrupt government and all that shit, I was into that. It was the Rices shit with the mind wipes and all that garbage I didn't care about.
Well, I was going to say, it's also, I think, important to remember for not just us, but also a lot of other people who are very invested in the series. We spend so much time reading about it, talking about it, poring over it, looking at the details. And it's very easy to get caught up when you're, in so many of the details. It's difficult to sometimes take a step back and remember kind of the whole thing as a whole. Because, like, right now, we get so into the nitty-gritty of it, and in a ways it almost kind of, like, takes away from the whole progression of it as like, at large. You look at it holistically. So that's just difficult. I think with any series, whether it's just this one or any other one, the more you get into it, sometimes the easier it is to kind of lose yourself from the big picture.
Right.
The way I've done this, because it's an ongoing series, is, you know what? I've enjoyed it up till here. This is not my plane to fly. This is not my car to drive. This is the author's. I'm going to see where he takes it, and I'm most likely going to enjoy it. I can criticize the in-universe actions of people, like how the mayor are fucking idiots for not just going in ninja-like and torturing someone to find out the coordinate.
Which, again, I feel it's crazy you think that would have worked, but okay.
Still.
Continue.
I don't think that would have
But I don't just sit here and, like, complain about it and yet still come back for more.
Well,
it's an interesting
at that point, Siller, at that point, that's not reading a manga. That's hiring a dominatrix.
There's a difference between us as to what we enjoy about the series and what we want from it. Because
I have still yet to hear you name something you enjoy about this series.
You don't want the same things from the series that I do, and most of those things for me are gone now. So, But that's to Ryan's point. That's subjected to everybody. Everybody has things about the series that got them into it, and the things that they enjoyed about it, and the things that they look forward to, and what they expected moving forward. People are going to have different reactions to that, just like you have a reaction that's totally different from mine, right? But to actually answer your question, like I said, I like the political drama. I think the characters are well built and they have good detail. The interactions are really interesting. I like the dialogue in the series. The designs are fine. I like the designs, even the world building. The thing that originally got me into the series was the premise. I thought the premise was mind blowing.
It's a cool concept.
It was. It still is. It's just it's not the same. It's not the same.
The story
as
has
what we
evolved
are
and
now.
changed since then. Yeah.
So I'm kind of torn. That's why I'm numb.
But it's okay, and I think it's good for you to have that opinion, because if we all just stood here and just jerked ourselves off over how great we think the story is, there wouldn't be any value in us even doing this.
Well,
Ryan, have you seen me? That's basically what I do every episode.
This is why I'm glad we have these differing opinions, is because, like I said, we're going to have different reactions to it. You know?
Yeah.
And I hate to be the guy that's the detractor here, but...
Well, you're not trying to be a Debbie Downer, but again, it's legitimate. If you
he
feel
kind of
there's no point lying about it.
I know I am the Debbie Downer, but I'm not trying to be. It's not what I wanted. It's not what I wanted. That's not how I saw this playing out. This could have gone totally differently. It's fine. We're fine.
Where's Scotty when we need him?
Yeah, really. Scotty would have shut me up by now.
Yeah, he would have just gone off about, no, you're an idiot, monkey troubles, clearly, Connie, hiding in the bushes, all that.
He would have
said,
some non sequitur from him would have shut me up, I think. Well, I have another line. I have one more that I was going to ask about.
Okay, one more giant half-hour argument. Good to know.
So, this will be a quick one. It's about the first line that we saw in the history about the devil and the Titan power being gifted to Ymir Fritz, and the title of the first chapter, which was "To You 2,000 Years in the Future." That title is referring to the devil, right?
Maybe.
So does that mean that we're going to see some kind of... I don't know. Is Satan going to appear?
It wasn't 2,000 years ago, though. It was 1,820.
So... Okay, so what I'm asking is who that what that title was referring to. What that's going towards.
I don't know if we know yet.
It's worth bringing up.
It might be something we literally don't know until the very last chapter of this series.
Is this the first time, however, in the series that this has been actually brought up again?
Well, something about vaguely 2000, yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Is the big bad going to be Satan?
I hope not. I hope this doesn't turn into a religious allegory. No. That is when I turn into a Stiller and say, fuck this. No, I do not want this to be versus Satan.
I think at this point, you have to start looking way back when remember back in the day when all those Norse theories were very popular?
Yeah,
absolutely. And they still are. I think they have some following. But I think that's kind of where you got to readdress now, because obviously there were very clear and purposeful allegories with regards to that. So if we were talking about some, manifestation of evil, whether it's some kind of divine presence or any kind of,
I mean, there are ghosts.
You also have to remember, the only reference we have to the devil is within the Mare propaganda book, right?
Right.
And they have a vested interest in making sure people know that Elodians are evil. What better way to establish evil than saying this comes from the devil?
Rock and roll.
Sure, it could be propaganda, but I think we need to go. I do think it's worth going back and looking at our little Norse mythology stuff that we were talking earlier about, because there is going to be some kind of quote unquote devil, if you want to call him that.
Right, that's what I was going to say.
Whatever that mythos
possibly going to be Norse. This isn't exactly devilish as much as it is like the snake giving the apple to Eve.
Sure.
Which again is an allegory for Satan, I guess, but.
I think the whole point of this is there's supposed to be the implication there's some kind of malevolent external force that introduced.
I wouldn't say that it's malevolent.
We already have ghosts, though.
It's not a ghost as much as the spirit or the will being passed down.
Do you draw a difference between a spirit and a ghost?
I don't know. I have a hard time saying that there's any positive way.
You know what, Stiller?
I'm taking the piss right now.
Look at take that piss and shove it up your ass, Zachary.
He's getting sent up the wall here.
Or shove it down your mouth.
I love being able to ask that question, just to fucking show how absurd it is. That ties it so well to the question of, is the final boss going to be Satan? Because look, we have ghosts. It's possible.
No, the final boss is not going to be Satan, because
I don't think it'll be literally Satan.
Quote-unquote devil is on the same side as our main characters, and the main characters are obviously the good guys. Therefore...
Are they?
I'm having too much fun. I should stop it.
If they're the characters that we've grown up with this entire time, I find it very hard to believe that Isayama is going to just come around and 180, joke's on you, everyone you know is dead, and that's a good thing.
And they were also bad. Yeah, I think that's totally possible, and it would be cool if he did that.
Well,
but I don't think he'd be able to pull it off.
You're missing it a little bit, because the point is that if they were to go that route, it wouldn't be to say everybody you know is evil, all the characters. Like, it would be to say that, look, even good people can be brought up in a system run by bad people, and the protagonists that you know and grew to love,
of course,
even though
we're good people, that would still be the bad guys winning,
premises.
And he'd have to figure out how to make us be happy with that.
Of course, that would be
part
message.
That's part of the the skill of storytelling.
Right. Of course, that would be the actual message. That would be fantastic if he could do that. But that would also imply that doesn't that also imply that the Mar propaganda is actually true?
Which I don't know. Hard to believe.
I'll tell you what I think. He's put himself in a hole here, or maybe not, but it's at the point where
he knows what he's doing.
Well, let me say this.
Actually, there has to be some truth to the propaganda, though, because why else would the mayor hate the Elodians?
No. I mean, so listen to what I'm going to say here. So he's been so explicit with the analogy with the Jewish thing, with whole armbands and everything like that, and the Nazis. He's been so explicit with that comparison that there's no way he could walk back and say that those are somehow the good guys with the armbands and everything, the armbands and the stars. I think that crossed the point where
he already got in trouble for making Pixis be like a Nazi general, so
I see what you're saying, though. He's not going to make the Mar the good guys. He's just going to make them.
No, he's not going to make the quote unquote the wall Nazis or whatever the good people.
Yeah, I mean they're still going to have their evil things about them. Of course.
Yeah,
the truth to the history of this world is somewhere between the Mare story and the Elodian story, because if it was all hunky dory, Ymir was 100% good, beneficial. She didn't hurt a fly. She created a utopia. Then the Mare have no reason to hate the Elodians.
You cannot justify a society ripping children from their parents and sending them to war, and you cannot justify turning those people into good guys.
Well, you have to remember those children and those parents were volunteers. They weren't just
from
slaves.
A system that they created.
Right.
You can't justify the Mar as being good people in any circumstance.
No, they can't be good people. I'm just saying it's not ripping them.
I think it is, but that's not the point that I was trying to make. So, just going off of what Ryan said, because you can't justify them more as good people, you can still have them be the winning side in this conflict, and you can still make the people inside the walls the bad people, or not necessarily the bad people, but the misguided and the victimized in this circumstance. You know what I mean? And you could still make that happen, and you could still create messages to take from that. Sort of what Ryan said. That's all I was trying to say. That was all I had for questions that I had, things that I didn't understand. Did you see that? Did you see there's a panel of random citizens on the street throwing shit at other people because they have the armbands?
Yeah,
it was they were trying to make the Jew analogy.
I know, but I like that detail. I like that visualization.
And there certainly wasn't much for subtlety. It was kind of beat you over the head with this concept.
Well, they also had the guy.
The chapter was basically 50%. Hey, they're Jews and Nazis, and then 50% actual exposition.
The other detail I liked was Grisha meeting with the guy from the Resistance for the first time, and he takes his shirt off and he shows the scar that shows the Resistance logo or whatever. And then you flash forward a couple of pages, and they have this Fight Club scene where they have all these guys in a circle together, and
they're cheering him on.
Yeah, he's got a blade tearing through his chest, and all these guys are standing around and going, "Yeah, move that blade.
Yeah, cut yourself.
Yeah." Woo! And then it has that close up of Grisha's face, and he's got this grimace on, and he's like, "We're gonna.
Why the fuck am I doing this?
We're gonna bring Elodia back."
Isn't he standing next to the guy who tried to eat Sasha as a Titan way later?
One of them, yeah. He's surrounded by the Trust Titans.
The Moe Titan.
Yeah, he's got the Quiet Titan. He's got the Titan that ate the first guy that died in Tross that made Aaron go rage mode.
Thomas?
Yeah, Thomas. And he's got the guy that ate Aaron's leg.
Where's Santa Claus Titan?
He's in the back.
So, okay, here's another visual comparison that I didn't realize before. There's a page where they're talking about how the first Titan War started between the Lodians and the Mar, and they show, like, knights holding spears and then Titans next to them holding spears across this, like, crevice or, like, this canyon-looking thing. On the other side, there's a guy wearing a Viking helmet and a shield who's a Titan, and there's a little guy.
Oh, that goes back to our Norse stuff.
Yeah. These guys hold Thor's hammer right there. I mean, come on.
It looks. I was actually just looking at that, and it looks to me like it's just a barrel with a log through it.
What I was going to ask was, is that the same visual that we saw at the beginning of the anime, where they talked about how there were wars before, or like where
I don't think so, because
I
I don't remember them ever actually being weapons in those visuals. It was mostly just people running. That being said, I do think we do need to rewatch the second ending of the anime where it has like all the
cave
visuals
paintings and such.
Yeah, the cave paintings.
Yeah, or like the wall paintings, whatever you want to call them.
Here's another thing worth pointing out. I don't know if this means anything or probably not, but in that same panel with talking about with the crevice and the spears, there's two banners that have some script on them. Some obviously very not Japanese script.
Right.
They're covered up by text bubbles, but you gotta wonder, is that just gibberish, or I wonder if it actually is.
One says
what page are you looking at?
One says Mar and the other says Lodia.
Oh, never mind.
What are you looking at?
Page
we were talking about.
31.
30. Oh wow, okay. I was looking at the
banners there, but big text bubbles in the well.
I was looking at the first section of things.
I'm sure they
one
just say
says
Lodia and Mar.
Well, one looks like a swastika.
It's probably the Mar.
Well, actually, it's on the side that has the Titans. Oh, wait.
Well, I mean, they
both sides have Titans, yeah. Well, there's a giant fucking horse in the background. Do you think that's the Mule Titan?
I know, look how big he is.
Jean's ancestor.
We are all descended from Ymir, except Jean. He's descended from that horse.
Because that horse also turns into a ghost and gets passed on through the years, too.
I don't think ghost is the right idea.
I'm really butthurt about that.
If you want to think of it differently, you can just think of it as recurring neurological patterns that happen.
I think it's interesting that everyone on the left side of the crevice has melee weapons and everyone on the right side has ranged weapons.
So the 105th squad has a new recruit named Peter Venkman.
What a guy!
I don't know the reference.
Somebody will. I imagine a few people will, and I'm glad that they got it. And there's that last panel. One of the last panels is showing Titans moving on the island, and it's the if you ever try and interfere in our affairs, and there's a bunch of islands that'll flatten the shit out of you, right?
Yeah.
That panel shows, like, I don't know how many colossal Titans. Those are all colossal Titans.
Yeah, quite a few.
That's what the wall's made of.
Yeah.
Is it just perspective that the one where we just see the foot looks bigger than the one in the front on the left?
What page is that?
That's 41.
Yeah, no, it's just perspective.
Because I would
it's just perspective. It's perspective.
It would be crazy.
The camera is underneath that Titan.
Yeah, it'd be crazy to think there's a Titan bigger than the colossal Titan.
Yeah, no, there's not. That's got to be it.
So now that we've gotten through all of our burning questions and we kind of understand it a little bit better, I don't think we still fully understand it. I mean, we probably do, and I
do. You don't.
Maybe I just don't feel it. Maybe I just don't feel comfortable with the information in this chapter, but I do understand it.
You're just denying it.
I don't know what this feeling is. This is a
denial, Spiller.
This is
denial.
An unprecedented feeling because I think I do understand the content in this chapter, but it feels like I don't. I don't know what that.
You're going instead of like hashtag not my president, you're doing not my shifters.
Not my chapter. Not my mom.
Not my chapter.
My chapter.
I didn't vote for this shit.
Oh God.
Yep.
Everything about that is bad. Everything. I'm not even happy with myself after that. Before we derail it any further, I want to say thank you guys for listening to the Chapter 86 edition of this podcast. We're not doing questions tonight. We're going to do that after Chapter 87, maybe after Chapter 88. I don't know. Stay tuned and you'll find out. But anyway, thank you guys for listening, and we will see you guys in the next chapter. Do. Yeah, it's good.
Is that your theme song? Nice.
I don't know if you noticed, but at the end of every single podcast we've ever done in the history of time, that we've always ended the podcast with that.
Oh yeah.
See, now I can use you doing that. And
No, I did not intend for that.